welcome to Crime in Court. My name is Heather, and this is an episode that I've really been looking forward to in this, as we're streaming the 1993 Menendez brothers trial. We've already gone through the state's case, and the star witness for the state was actually Dr. Oziel, who was the therapist, the psychologist for Eric Menendez, who confessed the crimes of uh, taking his parents' life, him and his brother. He confessed those crimes to Dr. Oziel, and Dr. Oziel secretly video or audio recorded their sessions with the help of his mistress, Judalon Smyth, who you see there. And we're going to have two parts to Judalon Smith's testimony. She is now testifying for the defense, so it's going to be interesting to see what she has to say about dear old Dr. Oziel. Um, he's been kind of called Dr. Weasel because he tried to weasel out of every single question that was asked to him by the defense. And it was quite something to see. And it took 6 parts to get through his testimony because of it. But so we are going to get started with Judalyn Smith. Like I said, this is Dr. Oziel's mistress. She secretly audio taped the confessions of Eric and Lyle. She listened in on some obviously private therapy sessions between Oziel and the boys, and or at least with Eric too. They had after Eric confessed, Dr. Oziel had Lyle come into the office, and that's when I believe they started recording these um, sessions without the boys' knowledge. All right, so she's going to tell us all about her role in it and what Dr. Oziel told her throughout this case. And was he maybe a clout chaser? I don't know. She might tell us something about that. So let's get started. Please hit the like button before we begin. It just helps this video get out to more individuals, and it also helps YouTube know what you like to watch. So let's get started here. We're on part 1, Judalyn Smith on the stand. Let's get started.
Yes.
And do you recall at that time that you provided Detective Zoller with some information which, so far as you know, led to the arrest of Eric and Lyle Menendez?
That's correct.
And was it based on that same information that the Beverly Hills Police Department recovered certain tapes from a safety deposit box from Dr. Oziel's bank, to your knowledge?
Objection calls for complete reporting.
Sustained. Did you provide the Beverly Hills Police Department, with certain information on March 5th, 1990 concerning some tapes which you knew of at that point?
Yes.
And did you have a lengthy conversation with Detective Zoller on March 5th, 1990?
Yes.
And the following day, that would be March 6th, 1990, did you have a second meeting with Detective Zoller and a deputy district attorney by the name of Elliot El Hadith?
I believe so.
And did Mr. El Hadith and Mr. Zoller tape record a very lengthy conversation with you?
Yes.
And during the course of that tape recorded conversation, did you tell Detective Zoller and Mr. El Hadith the background of your relationship with Dr. Jerome Oziel?
Somewhat.
And did the conversation and what you told them relate to a time period between June of 1989 and March 6, 1990, the time when you were talking to the detective and Mr. El Hadith?
Yes.
Did you, in fact, first meet Dr. Oziel in June of 1989?
June 28th of 1989.
And could you just very briefly describe the circumstances in which you met
She knows a specific date. I think she's going to be a good witness.
Dr. Oziel?
I had some tapes from a seminar which I had listened to, and I was interested in taking some of those seminars. And on the end of the tape, it said to call the Phobia Institute of Beverly Hills and called information. The phone number I received was the phone number for Dr. Oziel.
The Phobia Institute? Isn't that what she just said? Yeah, Phobia Institute of Beverly Hills. Why is he, if he's a phobia doctor or whatever, why is he treating Eric? Like, I really have concerns that Dr. Oziel was helping to was helping Jose in his disgusting habits and grooming these boys. If he's like a sex therapist, And apparently she contacted him through this Phobia Institute of Beverly Hills. Why would Kitty and Jose send their teenage son to a sex therapist who treats phobias? Which I'm assuming are probably phobias regarding sex, maybe? I don't know. Um, it just really makes me wonder. If anybody knows, I would love to know more about that.
Information. The phone number I received was the phone number for Dr. Oziel, and I left a message, and he called me back and talked me out of the seminars and into the idea that I needed one-on-one therapy.
And do you remember roughly when that first meeting was?
The first
Phone
physical
call.
meeting or the first phone
The
call?
first phone call.
In the first week of June of '89.
And when was your first meeting with him?
The first physical time we met was June 28th of '89.
And could I approach a witness, Sean?
Yeah.
Show you what has been marked previously, exhibit number 120. Directing your attention to the first page of that exhibit, which is a letter dated June 15th, 1989, beginning, "Hi Jerry, thank you for your time and consideration. Encloses my poetry book as a token with a Sound and Light business card." Do you see that?
Yes.
Is that your business card?
Yes.
And is that a letter that you wrote to Dr. Oziel as a result of your first contact with him?
Yes.
And after that first contact with him, was your initial relationship with him a business relationship?
No, not at all.
What was the standard nature of the relationship that you had with him in the very beginning?
It would flip-flop between therapy and his idea that he was my ideal person
Ideal person romantically?
romantically.
All right. And you said, I think, that in one of your first conversations, or the first conversation, he suggested to you that you needed therapy.
Yes.
What specifically did he say in that regard?
When I said that I wanted to take seminars, and he asked me the reason why, and I said because I had decided I wanted to have a relationship, I'd like to be married and have children, then he said, well,
This dude, I'm sorry, I like Dr. Oziel very little, but I like him even less because he's preying on people for what, like people come to him with their problems and he uses that against them. Oh, to manipulate them and okay, she wants to get married and have children, so he's like, okay, well, let's have a relationship then. What? What therapist does that?
based on what I was saying, that I had an intimacy problem, and he felt that I needed one-on-one therapy rather than to go to seminars.
Did he suggest to you that he was available to provide that one-on-one therapy?
Yes, he did.
Did he indicate to you what his fees were?
Yes, he did.
And what did
I'm going to warn you all that I am ramped up already because I just had to sit through all of those disgusting text messages from Trooper Proctor in the Karen Reed trial. So if you're watching that and you've been paying attention, you understand how disgusted I am about people in positions of power or authority using it to their advantage and at the detriment of others. And I hate that. And I'm already ramped up about it. So it seems like Oziel's doing the same. So if I have some nasty things to say about him, I apologize up front, but not really.
he say in that regard?
He said that his fees were like 160 upwards for 45 minutes.
And did you indicate that you would like to hire him as your therapist?
No, I said that that wasn't in my budget, that I was thinking of doing a seminar, and I was thinking, a couple $100 a month. So
And did he indicate that he was still going to provide therapy services to you?
at that time, what he indicated was that he was going to refer me to someone in the price range that I would be comfortable with.
And did that in fact happen?
Yes.
And did you get referred somehow back to Dr. Oziel?
The phone numbers that he gave me, no one ever answered the phone.
FYI, the equivalent of $150 in 1989 is about $379. So that piece of garbage was making $379 an hour, basically, like in our time. That's disgusting.
Or in one case, I left messages, but no one ever returned my calls. So I never connected with any of the numbers he gave me.
And did you end up in therapy with Dr. Oziel?
Yes.
And when did that patient-therapist relationship begin?
about the beginning of July. It's hard to say. It actually really began in June because of all the phone calls in preparation for referring me to someone else were all therapy.
Therapy in the sense that he was exploring your feelings on the telephone with you?
And eliciting from me just all of my background information, family information. So technically, I guess it would be that it started in June of '89.
And how long did it continue?
Up to the day that I escaped.
Which was what date?
June, it was Sunday, March, I think 4th.
When you say escaped, are you referring to leaving Dr. Oziel's house?
Yes.
Because for a certain period of time you lived in Dr. Oziel's house?
Yes.
And when did you first begin to live in his house and when did you leave?
He may or may not have been the only mistress to have lived in the house with him and his wife.
He took me there in mid-December, mid to late December, around the 19th. The exact date, I'm not positive of the exact date, but mid to late December of '89 until I think it was March 4th of '90.
Now, the therapy that you were receiving from him, was that therapy where you would go into his office and have a session with him in the office and then pay him some money?
No.
What kind of therapy was it?
Sometimes I did go to the office, but most of the time he came to my house.
And how would the therapy, just in general, without getting into the details, how would it happen that he would be coming to your house providing therapy?
Because it wasn't officially like I was a patient, and he would always maneuver it so that he would say, well, I'll just drop by, or it would be the timing. It was always something to do with the timing. And so it just ended up that my house was only 5 minutes away from his office.
And were there times?
Let's just backtrack and remember that Dr. Oziel on the stand testified that it was her constantly pursuing the relationship. It was Judalon pursuing him. She was always flirting and trying to make it more than patient-doctor relationship. That's what he said, but I don't believe him.
During the period of time when he was giving you therapy where he would provide letters to you indicating the nature of your problem, your psychological problem?
He did write me a diagnosis letter.
All right. Could I again put the word, Sean? Yes. Smith, showing you exhibit number 112. Would you take a minute to read that? That's a letter dated September 3rd, 1989, to whom it may concern. And it says, Judalon Smyth was incapacitated by a chronic stress-induced panic disorder, as reported to me by her by way of telephone. That's signed Dr. Jerome Oziel, Director, Beverly Psychiatric and Psychological Center. And it also talks about an extensive phone consultation that Dr. Oziel did with you. Are you familiar with that letter?
These are the words, but it was on his letterhead. This is not his letterhead.
And that's signed by, were there actually 2 letters that he provided to you indicating a diagnosis?
Yes.
And showing you exhibit number, what I've had marked as 327, which is on a Beverly Psychiatric and Psychological Center stationery. It's dated August 30th, 1989. It says, to whom it may concern, Judalon Smyth was directed not to attempt ambulation or travel 8/30/89 on medical advice due to numbness and something I can't read, affecting motor capacity to the extent that any such attempt at movement, ambulation, or operation of a vehicle would have been impossible or dangerous. And it's signed Dennis J. Munjak, M-U-N-J-A-C-K, M.D., who's identified as the director of the Beverly Psychiatric and Psychological Center. Do you see that letter?
Yes.
Are you familiar with Dr. Oziel's handwriting?
Yes.
And is that letter, which is purportedly signed by Dr. Munjak, actually authored by Dr. Oziel?
Yes.
And do you know the circumstances under which that letter was written? Was that provided to you?
He provided it to me.
For what reason?
What?
Because I had a landlord-tenant small claims case, and I had a stress-related problem where I would wake up sometimes and not be able to move on one side of my body. And the morning of that court hearing, that's what happened. And so he told me that just to call the court and tell them, and that he would write the letter because he was the one who had diagnosed it. I'd had the stress disorder for some time, but it had not been diagnosed by my medical doctor.
And did you ever see Dr. Munjak before that letter was written?
I've never seen Dr. Munjak.
And did Dr. Oziel provide you that letter purportedly written by Dr. Munjak?
Yes.
And did you use that in your court case?
No. When I noticed the signature, I refused to take it to the court because it's a lie. I'm not a patient of Dr. Munjak's.
And did you then obtain from Dr. Oziel a second letter, which is the letter that's in front of you, signed by Dr. Oziel, relating to the same conditions?
Yes.
And you're quite sure that the handwriting on both those letters is Dr. Oziel's?
Absolutely.
Is there any doubt in your mind about that?
No.
Now,
Wow.
one of the letters is written on the Beverly Psychiatric and Psychological Center stationery, correct?
Yes.
And as far as Dr. Oziel represented to you, was he the director of that center?
Yes.
Did Dr. Oziel also represent to you that in addition to being the director of that center, that he had other businesses going at the same time?
Yes, he did.
Did he in fact present to you various business cards indicating that he was engaged in several businesses?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm showing you what's remarked as exhibit number 330. You recognize that piece of paper as containing a sampling of Dr. Oziel's business cards?
Yes.
Did he provide these cards to you during the course of your therapy with him?
Yes, he did.
And is one of the cards Beverly Psychiatric and Psychological Center, Dr. Jerome Oziel?
Yes.
And is another card the 50/50 Financial Systems, J. L. Jerome Oziel, President and Chief Executive Officer?
Yes.
Is a third card Funes, F-U-N-E-S, in Oziel, Furniture and Gift World,
Yes.
2045 Westlake Avenue, Seattle, Washington?
Yes.
And is another business card that was provided to you by Dr. Oziel during your therapy, something called Automax, A-U-T-O-M-A-X, J.
How does this guy even have the time? If he's this therapist that's so well renowned and has all these high paying clients, because 380 is a lot per hour to pay for a therapist, and these people, this is crazy. How does he have time to have all these different businesses and different business cards? I'm just, what is Oziel's deal? I don't get it.
Jerome Oziel, Chairman of the Board, President and Chief Executive Officer.
Yes.
Okay. Did he provide all those cards to you during the course of your therapy with him?
Yes, he did.
Wait a minute, they could all just be fabricated too, just like he fabricated that letter. So maybe he doesn't have any dealings with these other companies. They're just fake business cards. Oh my gosh. We're only 15 minutes into this testimony, 16 minutes, and so many questions I have.
And in addition to providing those cards to you, did he, from time to time, call you up and propose various business schemes?
Yes.
And did you,
Maybe therapy wasn't doing so well for him. Maybe he wasn't, maybe he didn't have a full calendar and he was looking for other ideas to supplement his income. I don't know. But it just seems strange. It seems like we've been saying he's a clout chaser. He wanted to write a book about the boys, and yeah. What are all these businesses?
during the course of your relationship with him, in fact, tape record telephone conversations in which he would call you up and propose these schemes to you?
From my answering machine, there are tape recorded calls.
And when would you start tape recording calls from him? Just time-wise. Can you give us a time frame of when you started doing that?
I started keeping the tapes from my answering machine in September of '89.
Why were you recording the phone calls from him?
I wasn't recording the phone calls.
How did they end up being recorded on your answering machine?
I had this answering machine that had its own mind, and it just would record and stop recording at its own will. And also, I also left the recorder on all the time because I didn't have phones in every room. I just had a phone in my bedroom, and if I was in the front part of the house, I wouldn't hear the phone, or I would, and then I'd pick up. The only extension I had was in the kitchen. And so if we started talking before the outgoing message was finished, then the answering machine just assumed that we were leaving a message. It didn't know we were having a conversation.
And so that's how you came to record conversations?
So that's how I came by the tape recordings.
And after you had a meeting with Detective Zoller and Mr. Alhada, was there another period of time where you were recording conversations with Dr. Oziel at the specific request of the Beverly Hills Police Department?
Yes.
In fact, on one occasion, did the Beverly Hills Police Department provide you with what's called a body wire for you to wear to a
Yes.
meeting with Dr. Oziel?
That's correct.
That was in March of 1990.
Correct.
Showing you what I've had marked as exhibit number 329. Is that a cassette of a tape-recorded telephone message which took place in September of 1989?
Yes, it is.
And that was why you were a patient with Dr. Oziel?
Yes.
I want to play this recording for you and then ask you a question about it.
Absolutely. So, get it all together in 1 week. Get it all together, organize it. You know this with me.
after listening to that tape, what's being referred to there? He indicated you had 1 week to get it together, and you said that tape was made in September of '89. What is he talking about there? First of all, is that Dr. Oziel's voice on the tape?
Yes.
And did you understand what he was referring to? Specifically, was a reference made to a business proposition that you were aware of at that time, when that telephone call was made?
When he left the message, I may not have been, because he came up with new ideas every day, every week.
All right, and playing you what I've had marked as 328, which is a cassette tape, is that a tape that was made by you off your answering machine in early October 1989?
Yes.
And playing this tape.
That's a lot better. When I slow it down, let's start that over. You've listened to that tape. I barely understood half of that, but I could tell he's talking about some kind of business deal that they want to do really quickly. That's all I could tell.
And on that tape, he's referring to some project where you're going to make big money.
Yeah,
You
I
know
know
what he was referring to there?
Yes.
What was he referring to?
He was going to do Spanish-speaking mental health clinics for something to do with some kind of insurance and workman's comp.
And what was your role in that business scheme?
I didn't have any role in that. I had nothing to, no involvement.
Well, what was your understanding as to why he was calling you up and explaining to you that he had some scheme that was going to make big money?
He likes to tell everyone how, great he is at business, and he was just calling to brag.
Oh, wow. You know what? I totally buy that. After seeing him on the stand and how he acted, I totally buy that answer. He seemed, in my opinion, very egotistical, like an egomaniac who really only cared about his own actions and didn't matter, like any other implications of what he did didn't matter to him. So I totally buy that he was just calling to brag to her about these business ideas.
And at the same time that he would call to brag, did he also, beginning in about October, start to call up and express a certain obsessiveness with what you were doing and possessiveness in regards to your romantic relationship with him?
Objection, compound and cause for conclusion.
Did Dr. Oziel, around beginning in October or even before that, start making a lot of telephone calls to your house?
I would say it started before October.
And when did it start?
Probably mid-August is when mid-August, early September is when they got when they became,
And he's testified here
Redundant.
that those,
I'm sorry, yes.
He's testified here that those telephone calls that are reflected on his phone bills were made because you started putting pressure on him to call him back all the time. Is that true?
No.
And did you go through his phone bills and also your own phone bills to establish what pattern, if any, there was to the phone calls that were made by him versus the phone calls you were making to him?
Yes, I did.
And he has testified there were telephone calls, for instance, that took 268 minutes. Do you recall conversations of that length?
There were times when he kept me on the phone all night.
And what was being talked about just in general during the times when he was calling you, keeping you on the phone all night?
He would just be badgering and haranguing and manipulating and trying to make me say something or do something that I was resisting. And he wouldn't give up. He would persist until I would say it or do it or agree. And if that took, 300 minutes or 500 minutes or however long it took for him to break me down, that's how long the conversation would last.
And break you down in what way? What was he trying to break you down to?
To do what
This guy is treating people for mental health. And this is how he treats people? Unreal.
the conversation would last.
And break you down in what way? What was he trying to break you down
To do what he wanted.
to? Which was what?
It could be anything, from just to do whatever he wanted me to do.
And that occurred over a lengthy period of time, beginning in June, including right up to the point in time when you moved into his house.
Correct.
And would it also be true that on occasions he would call you up and disguise his voice as someone else
Yes.
and ask what you were doing and whether you've been out with other men
Yes.
and showing you what's...
Your name, Coach.
Yes. Can I put you witness again? Yes. It's showing you exhibit number 231. Do you recognize this as a list of the telephone calls that were made by Dr. Oziel to you in a period from June through November 7th, 1989?
Yes.
And did you create that document?
Yes.
And how was the document created?
My attorney obtained Dr. Oziel's phone records through discovery, and then we took Dr. Oziel's phone records and my phone records and listed them on the computer and created this document, which I think all of them except for the month of December is in the order that the calls came or were placed.
And when did the calls from Dr. Oziel to you begin?
These calls are only reflective of calls made from his home number, not his office number, because his office number to my home or my business was a local call.
And when did the calls from his home to either your office or your home begin?
June 12th.
And how frequently were the calls made in that period from June to November?
Remember, she reached out to him about a seminar in June. No, June. So that's when the communication started. However, he early on apparently was already incessantly trying to worm his way into her life somehow.
How frequent?
You mean the whole time period?
Just in general, if you could characterize it. Was he calling you once a day, once a week,
Oh, several times a day.
and all
Every
hours of
day.
the day and night?
All hours of the day and night.
And for hours at a time sometimes?
Yes.
And during the time when he was calling you, was he providing you therapy?
Sometimes.
Was he also talking to you about your relationship, your personal relationship?
Yes.
You said that you and your attorney were involved in preparation of that. Did you at some point end up suing Dr. Oziel?
Yes.
And did the pattern of calls end in November?
No.
Did they end in December when you moved into his home?
No.
And sometime around October, were you still involved with Dr. Oziel in a relationship?
Yes.
And on the weekend of October 30th, 1989, did you go out of state with Dr. Oziel?
Yes.
Do you have picture with us again, Aaron?
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked as 116. You recognize that as a boarding pass and a receipt for a place called West Court in Buttes in Tempe, Arizona.
Yes.
Is that dated October 30th, the boarding pass?
Actually, I can't see the date on here, but that was the weekend.
What I won't have marked is, if you could compare the two, is that just a better copy of that same exhibit?
Yes. It's the same. It's just a darker copy.
And does it show the date of October 30th?
Where's the date supposed to be on
Why don't
here?
you
I would
show it?
stipulate that it shows the date of October 30th on the copy he presented.
Oh, I see. It's stamped across there. I'm looking at the little type. It says October 30th.
Is that the weekend that you and Dr. Oziel went to Arizona?
Yes.
And before you went to Arizona, did you have some information that Dr. Oziel was going to meet with Eric Menendez on the 31st?
I've never been clear whether that phone call was just before we left or if it was the day that we returned.
And when you're referring to that phone call, would you tell us what you're talking about?
From my home, Oziel had picked up his messages from his wife Laurel and learned that Eric Menendez wanted to talk with him. And so from my house, he called Eric and spoke with him and set up an appointment.
And did he indicate to you what the nature of the meeting was going to be or anything at all about Eric Menendez?
Yes.
What did he indicate to you?
When he hung up the phone, he said that he hoped he wasn't going to hear what he thought he was going to hear. And when I asked him what he thought he was going to hear, he said that they killed their parents.
Right. Now, was it your understanding at that time when you had that conversation that Eric Menendez was a patient of Dr. Oziel's?
At that time?
Yes.
No.
Right. And you were a patient of his at that time?
Yes.
Was it unusual for Dr. Oziel to be talking to you about his other patients?
No.
And in fact, you have tape-recorded conversations in which Dr. Oziel reveals the nature of clients' problems that have been seen, correct?
Objection,
Correct.
irrelevant.
Objection to the form of the question is sustained. The answer is correct.
Did you
Not
tape-record
relevant.
a telephone call from Dr. Oziel in which he discusses confidential problems of the patient?
Objection,
Yes.
irrelevant.
Full roll.
And showing you exhibit number 333, is this a tape cassette that you prepared containing the conversation in which Dr. Oziel tells you about a woman doctor he's been treating and the nature of her sexual problems?
That's correct.
And is exhibit number 334 a cassette which you obtained from your answering machine, which reflects a conversation with Dr. Oziel again in October, in which he tells you about someone he refers to as a studio guy who is a patient of his?
Correct.
And was that uncommon for Dr. Oziel to be revealing the problems of his patients to you before October 31st, 1989?
No.
Would he actually name the patient by name? Or would-
Sometimes.
and other times would he just refer to someone, for instance, on that tape as a doctor and indicate in general what the person's problems were?
He would give vital information that you couldn't mistake who the person is.
Now, going back to on or about October 30th, you had a conversation with Dr. Oziel about a planned meeting he had with Eric Menendez, correct?
I'm sorry, on what date?
On or about October 30th, either before or while
Correct.
you were in Arizona?
Correct.
And he indicated to you that he hoped it wasn't what he thought it was.
That's correct.
And that conversation was with you, it was not with his wife, correct?
No, that conversation was between Oziel and myself
And where were you when you had that conversation?
in my bedroom.
And do you think the date of that was on October 30th or some other date?
It was either on the 30th, the day that we returned from the airport, or it was just before, but I would say it was the 30th when we had returned from Arizona.
And while you were in Arizona, did you and Dr. Oziel have an argument, without getting into the details of it, about whether your romantic relationship was going to continue?
I had broken off the relationship that Friday, and then,
The Friday before you went to Arizona?
yes,
And
that
why-
Friday and Saturday,
Why were you going to Arizona with him if you had broken off the relationship?
because on Saturday when I hung up the phone and didn't want to talk with him or go to Arizona, then he raced to my store and did a big number on me, and somehow I ended up going to Arizona. And then in Arizona, we also had a confrontation about how the relationship needed to be different.
And again, without getting into the details, did you tell him that the relationship was going to end that weekend?
Yes.
You did. And so you had already told him that when he told you about this conversation with Eric Menendez?
Objection, leading.
Had he already told you that had you already told him that the relationship was going to end when you had this conversation about Eric Menendez?
I had told him prior. I told him that the relationship was over prior to the discussion about Eric
And
Menendez.
how did he accept that news that the relationship was going to be over?
He didn't believe it or accept it, and he laughed a lot and just did his manipulations.
And when you say he did his manipulation, was he trying to keep you in the relationship or not?
He was trying to keep me in the relationship.
And how was he doing that?
Just by the things that he was saying, and then when this phone call came up and he asked me to go and be there for him, that this was like the one last thing I could do, and that if I did this, that it would show that all this work that he had put in on me wasn't for nothing, that if I did this, that it would show that I had like learned something.
And when you say did this, what was he asking you to do in relation to the conversation he had with Eric Menendez?
He was asking me to come and be there in case something happened to him so I could call the police or call an ambulance.
And did he give you instructions on what you were to do if
Yes,
he was
he
in a
did.
dangerous situation?
Yes, he did.
What did he say?
He had said that he was going to leave the doors to the other offices. There were 3 offices, and he was going to leave the doors to the other 2 offices unlocked so I could go in there to use the phone. And he just, told me to pay attention and listen carefully, and if I, heard anything that seemed like he was in danger, that I was to call the police.
And did he put you in fear as a result of telling you information
Most
about Eric?
definitely.
And did you, in fact, go to his office on October 31st?
Yes, I did.
What time did you arrive there?
A little after 5.
Now, Dr. Oziel testified he didn't recall you being there on the 31st, and he also said that after he had the session with Eric Menendez and Lyle Menendez, he drove to your house and told you about the sessions for the first time. Was that true testimony?
It's an outright lie.
And where had you gone to work that day on October 31st?
I went to work on October 31st.
And what time did you get out of work that day?
Oziel called me, I would say around 4:30 or 4:45, and he was with Eric at the time, and he told me that he was checking to make sure that I was going to be there, and insisted that I leave at that moment, which I did. And
Did you take anything with you for your own protection?
I went to my house, and I got a gun from my next-door neighbor.
Who was your next door neighbor? I
Robert.
don't want his last name, but what did he do? How is it he had a gun?
I don't know why he has a gun, but he has a gun, and I borrowed it from him.
Was that a handgun?
I believe it's called a .357 Magnum.
And was it loaded? Did you take a loaded gun?
It was loaded, and he showed me how to shoot it,
Why did you take a loaded gun with you?
because Oziel had made me very fearful.
And when you had a telephone conversation with him before you left work, did he indicate to you anything that Eric had said to him?
At that time, no.
And you were fearful because of something he had told you before that conversation?
Yes.
And was that fear as a result of your initial conversation with him when he said he had talked to Eric on the telephone to set up the appointment?
The fear was generated from the conversation we had after the phone call with Eric.
Now, when you got over to the office, what time do you think it was?
I would estimate about 5:15.
And what did you do when you got there?
I went into the waiting area, and there's these little buttons on the wall, and I pushed the Oziel button, and then I sat down and waited.
And what happened next?
Oziel came and stuck his head out the door and said that it was as he suspected. And
What did you take that to mean?
I took that to mean that they had killed their parents.
And after he said, it's as I suspected, what happened next?
I believe he went back in to the office with Eric for a while.
And what did you do when he did that?
I just waited in the waiting room.
Could you hear anything from the waiting room? Any noises at all?
At that time,
Yes.
no.
And how long did you wait there before you did something else?
He came back out and told me that he was having Eric call his brother, that he didn't want Eric to tell Lyle that he had told him outside of his presence, that he wanted Lyle to be there when he found out, and that Lyle would be coming shortly, and that I wasn't to talk to him.
And did, in fact, Lyle come shortly thereafter?
Yes,
And were you still in the waiting room when Lyle arrived?
yes,
Did you have any conversation with him?
yes.
What was the conversation?
He came in and he pressed the Oziel button, and then he picked up a magazine and he started leafing through it, and then he asked me if I had been waiting long, and I made some stupid comment back, like, you know how doctors are or whatever, and that was it.
And then did he go into the inner office of Dr. Oziel?
Oziel came out and got him, and they went back into the inner office.
And did you remain in the waiting room or go somewhere else?
I went somewhere else.
Where did you go?
I went in the hallway to go into Laurel's office, and the door was locked. So I tried Munjak's office, and that door was locked.
And you were in the hallway at this point?
Yes.
And what did you do next?
I just sort of stood there, a little perplexed and stunned because the doors were locked.
And could you hear anything in the office from the hallway at that point?
Yes.
What did you hear?
Lyle was very angry, and he was yelling at his brother that he was angry at him, and he was just upset with him and couldn't believe that he had done this or said this. And
Anything else that you heard?
not that I recall.
And how long did you stay in the hallway before you went somewhere else?
Just those few minutes, and then I went back to the waiting room.
And then what happened?
Time-wise, I'm not sure of the amount of time, but the next thing I knew, Eric ran past me, and he went down the stairway, and then Lyle came out, and then Oziel was following Lyle, and they went to the elevator.
Now, is the elevator on the same floor as Dr. Oziel's office?
Yes.
And could you see from the waiting room where the elevator was?
Yes.
And what did you see?
The two of them were standing in front of the elevator. Lyle was closest to the doors, and Oziel was behind him.
And did they have a conversation?
Yes.
What was the conversation you heard at that time?
Lyle said something about, well, I can understand, why, I can understand that he needed to or something. And then Oziel was saying, well, you really should stay and come back in my office, and you have to understand about confidentiality or something. And Lyle was just wanting to leave and go tend to his brother. And,
Yeah, Lucas right, Lyle wanted to attend to his brother's speculation department.
well, he said,
Portion of the answer is
Did Lyle Menendez say anything about what his intentions were in wanting to leave?
yes, he said he wanted to go take care of his brother.
And what did Oziel say?
And Oziel just wanted them to come back to the office, and the elevator was coming, and Lyle just said, Oziel, and got in the elevator, and then Oziel jumped in the elevator after him.
The statement by Lyle, good luck, was before he got into the elevator, correct?
Yes.
And Dr. Oziel has testified that that conversation occurred downstairs near the Jeep. Is that true?
I wouldn't know. I wasn't downstairs
But you specifically heard Lyle Menendez say good luck to Dr. Oziel.
at the elevator.
Did Dr. Oziel say that Lyle needed him, or words to that effect?
Yes.
In what context did he say that?
Exactly, I'm not sure, but he was trying to convey to Lyle that not just Lyle, but both of them needed him.
Did Dr. Oziel say anything about being threatened, that he felt threatened? His perceptions were that he was threatened.
At the elevator?
Yes.
He said to Lyle, he said, are you threatening me? Is that a direct threat?
And that was said in response to what? What did Lyle Menendez said?
Good luck.
And when you heard that, did it seem to you that Lyle Menendez said good luck in a threatening manner?
At the time that I heard it, I didn't think so. But then Dr. Oziel came back up and told me that it was, that I just didn't know what a threat was.
Right. But not based on what Dr. Oziel later told you, but based on your own observation of seeing that conversation, did it appear to you that Lyle Menendez was threatening Dr. Oziel?
Based on my own observation, I would say he was just trying to get away from him.
Was he being menacing in any way? In the way that he said good luck or in anything else he did?
Not in my opinion, but later Dr. Oziel said that my opinion wasn't accurate.
And up to that point, had you heard Lyle or Eric Menendez threaten Dr. Oziel or anyone associated with him?
No.
Later on, did Dr. Oziel tell you that that supposedly is what he heard?
Later on, he told me that that's what was said.
Right, but you never heard that.
No.
And after Dr. Oziel, you said he got in the elevator with Lyle Menendez?
Yes.
And how long was he gone?
A few minutes.
And then what happened?
He came back up and he locked the door to the waiting room. Then he locked the door between the waiting room and the hall. Then we went into his office and he locked the door to his office.
And what happened then?
Then he said that they had killed their parents and that they had threatened him and everyone connected to him, and that it wasn't safe, and that he needed to, have Laurel get out of the house and get the kids out of the house. And then he started making phone calls.
And did he say that you were in danger?
Yes.
Did he say why you were in danger?
just because I was there and because I was connected to him.
And were you afraid as a result of what he told you?
Yes.
Did you think at that point that you needed Dr. Oziel in any way because of the danger that he was making you feel?
Yes.
That he could maybe help you out of the danger you felt?
I felt he was my only chance.
And that was as a result of information that he gave you, correct?
Correct.
At a point in time when your relationship was not going so well?
Correct.
And were your hands, in fact, shaking during that time when you were in the office with Dr. Oziel by himself?
Yes.
Did you have a conversation about the fact that your hands were shaking? And
I'm super angry. It's disgusting how manipulative this guy was. It's so gross.
his weren't?
Yes.
What was the conversation?
He pointed out that my hands were cold and shaking, and then he said that when your hands are cold, that indicates stress. And then he made a big deal about how his hands weren't, and he held his hands out, and he said, feel my hands, feel how warm my hands are, and see, no one else, no other man you know could handle this well, and, am I bothered, am I worried? And, he was just like, oh, he's the big protector.
And later on,
Which absolutely makes me believe he was not scared of these boys. He went running after them, first of all, and trying to confront them in the hallway. If you're really scared of someone, you don't go running after them. And you don't try setting up the whatever he tried setting up with her involved. And I think he was totally trying to get her, he played it up to make her scared so that so he seemed like the big hero. I think he totally took advantage of this situation and made it something he could get something from Judalon from, and maybe blackmail the boys. Maybe that was the whole purpose of it, of recording them. I don't know. 'Cause he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that's on the up and up. So what he was going to do with those messages, I don't know. Blackmail, I think.
in fact, in March, when you had a tape-recorded interview with him at the request of the Beverly Hills Police Department, you said to him, I don't think you're afraid of the boys, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And he said to you on tape, I don't think I'm afraid of anybody, or words to that effect.
That sounds accurate.
And did he seem to you like he was afraid when you were with him on October 31st after he had been with the Menendez brothers?
No.
Were you afraid, though?
Yes.
Now, did he, in fact, start to call people on the telephone at that point?
Yes, he did.
And who did he call, at least from what you could hear on your end of the conversation?
The first call he made was to his wife, Laurel.
And who else did he call?
Then the other people, I don't know their names, but he told me that they were people connected with the, like an ethical board of psychology or something.
And while he was on the telephone, were you attempting to communicate to him by writing something on a notepad
Yes.
and showing you what's been marked as read through the car? Do you recognize that document? It's a one-page Xerox copy which says, I'll pick it up. Does the public lot lock at a certain time, question mark. And then there's some writing at the bottom. You see that?
Yes.
Is that your handwriting?
Some of it's my handwriting.
Which is your handwriting?
The written words from here up. The I'll pick it up to the we, SH.
So your words are, I'll pick it up, and then does the public lot lock at a certain time, question mark.
Correct.
And why did you write down, I'll pick it up?
The first call he made was to Laurel, where he told her that he was going to be moving into my house and that she was to pack a bag for him and that he wanted her to go to a hotel and to tell the children that they had a gas leak in the kitchen and they were going to stay in a hotel until it was fixed, and that he was going to be staying near his office. And so then he kept saying that either he would pick up the suitcase
He would go to his house and pick up the suitcase?
or I would pick up the suitcase, or we would both come and pick up the suitcase. And when he said that, I saw it as an opportunity to get out of there, so I wrote, I'll pick it up.
And did you, in fact, later that night go over to the house and pick up the suitcase?
He wouldn't let me out of his sight. The two of us went together to pick it up.
To his house you went on October 31st?
Correct.
He testified that the reason he had to come to your house was because he was fearful of going to his own house because the Menendez brothers might be there. And are you testifying that he, in fact, drove with you to his house to pick up a suitcase?
Correct.
He also testified that he was looking in his rearview mirror on his drive to your house to see if the Menendez brothers were following him. Was that true testimony? Did you see
See her face? Look at her face. She's like, huh? No, that didn't happen.
house to pick up a suitcase?
Correct.
He also testified that he was looking in his rearview mirror on his drive to your house to see if the Menendez brothers were following him. Was that true testimony? Did you see Dr. Oziel looking in his rearview mirror on the way to his house to pick up his suitcase?
No.
Did you pull right up in his driveway and go into the house?
We pulled up into the driveway, and the suitcase was on the front porch.
Was Mrs. Oziel already gone?
She was already gone.
And what happened then? Did you go inside the house?
Not on that day.
You picked up the suitcase and left?
We picked up the suitcase and left.
And what is the other handwriting on that note that you wrote?
You mean, what does the public lot lock at a certain time mean?
Why did you write that down?
Because I looked at the clock, and it was around 10 o'clock, and it started to occur to me that I had parked my car in the public lot next to his office, and I wanted to, like, move my car if that was the case. And so he was on the phone. I couldn't verbally ask him, so I wrote it down. And indeed, the lot had locked at 10 o'clock, and my car was there until the next day.
At the bottom of this note, there is a phone number, 9070150, and then Jim and Judy. Do you know who wrote that down?
Oziel.
And do you know what that was, why that was written down?
Those are the people that Laurel and the children went to stay with that night.
So he's actually writing this down as he's talking to his wife on the phone.
Correct.
And on the side, there are three telephone numbers, 2310495E, 2310594L, and then 2850052M. Do you know who wrote that down and what it refers to?
Oziel wrote those numbers down, and they are the phone numbers for Eric and Lyle and the main house number
And do you know where he obtained those phone numbers from?
from Laurel.
How is it that you ended up with that note? Did you take the original of that note that's in front of you there?
He brought the original home because he wanted those phone numbers.
And how is it that you came into possession of it?
It just stayed around the house, and
She's a really good witness for the defense. I mean, she has, I just want to interject here. It's kind of riveting, so I've been really, tuned in. But she's a really good witness because not once has she said, I don't know, I don't remember, I forget. Like all the people all the witnesses that were there in the house when in the Karen Reed case, all of those witnesses have the I do not recall or I forgot um, amnesia because whenever they're asked questions on cross, they forget. But she doesn't forget. She has like specific times, dates, memories that I mean, she's thinking about her answers too. You can tell. Like she is very credible to me. This is what a credible witness looks like.
somehow I still had it.
Now, when he was making these telephone calls, were you sitting on the desk trying to soothe him in some way?
Some of the time,
What were you doing?
rubbing the back of his neck and shoulders.
And did he seem fearful at that time when you were doing that?
No, he talked and laughed with some of the people, but I thought that could just be a cover.
He was laughing with some of the people he was talking to on the telephone?
Yes,
And how long was he making these phone calls before you and Dr. Oziel went somewhere else?
quite a long time.
And who else did he call besides his wife and the other person that you referred to?
The people he represented to me that were the ethical medical board people. He also called a police station.
And had a conversation with someone at the police station?
Yes,
And after he had the telephone conversations, did you leave with him?
yes.
And where did you go?
He called downstairs and had the guard or a night watchman come up and escort us to his car because my car was locked in the garage. I mean, it would have been better if we had taken my car because I had a phone in my car and he didn't. And so it would have been best if we could take my car, but my car was locked up. So we went to his car.
And did he explain to you why he had to come in and move in with you?
Because they couldn't be in their own house.
Did you talk about the fact that you're, at least prior to this happening, you were going to end your relationship and now he was going to get a suitcase to move in? Was that discussed at all?
That night?
Yes.
No.
After you went to his house to get the suitcase, did you in fact go to your own home and spend the night?
Yes, and there's a witness to the fact that we came into my house together and that he had a suitcase because I had a roommate living with me at the time.
Who was that?
Suzanne?
And he stayed that night, correct?
Correct.
And then the next morning, did he get up and go to work?
The next morning, he did go into the office. We went together because I had to collect my car.
Because it was still in the lot?
It was still in the public lot.
And that would have been November 1st.
November 1st, correct.
On November 2nd, did you have occasion to be back in Dr. Oziel's office for another session where Lyle and Eric were present?
Yes.
And before that session took place, were you with Dr. Oziel on November 1st?
Yes.
Did he spend the night with you that night as well?
Yes.
Did he seem fearful during this period of time?
He was presenting to me that he was very upset because he claimed that they left the office and that they had not arranged another appointment with him. And he kept saying to me that if he could just see them one more time, he could get control of them.
Control in what way?
Just control of them.
Did he fill in any of the details to you as to who the Menendez brothers
Control
were
of
and
them.
how much?
Control of them. He wants control of the boys. That's what I said. That was the only reason why he did this. He wanted to blackmail them. Maybe not the only reason. Maybe he had a slight amount of fear, but I really don't think that he did. I think it was more so for clout, for blackmail, for whatever reasons. He wanted to get in on this story. He basically was going to utilize this story for himself and for his career and for whatever else. That's what I think.
They had not arranged another appointment with him. And he kept saying to me that if he could just
I went back just a few seconds so we can hear that again about he wants to control them.
see them one more time, he could get control of them.
Control in what way?
Just control of them.
Did he fill in any of the details to you as to who the Menendez brothers were and how much money they were worth or anything along those lines? Before the November 2nd session?
When it first appeared in the newspapers that Kitty and Jose Menendez were dead, then he told me that the Menendezes were his best friends.
The Menendez parents were his best friends?
Yes, that they were his best friends, and that the reason why he was calling the boys and going to the memorial service and all these things was because Jose was his best friend, and if this had happened to him, that Jose would do this for his daughters.
What a liar! Oh my God. What a manipulative, lying sack of crap Dr. Oziel is.
And did he mention anything about money or about how much the estate was worth or how much the boys were worth or anything along those lines?
Yes.
When did he first mention that topic?
Of course.
Shortly after the parents had the memorial service,
And what did he say about that?
he said that they were worth $14 million and that these boys were going to inherit $14 million and that they were going to need his guidance and his assistance to invest the money properly and to find the right accountants and the right lawyers.
Why? Why would they go to a therapist, a sex therapist, for advice on their finances? When they go to a financial advisor, I mean, what the hell's the point of using their therapist for making the right account? Like, what? Why would they use their therapist for finances? It's like hiring a butcher to do your taxes. I mean, no offense, they might know how to do your taxes, but that's not really what they're supposed to do in life. I mean, that's not what I meant. That's not what they do, as a career. And it just came up. That's not what they do as a career. And taxes are the furthest thing from their mind, 364 days of the year. So why would you get your therapist for, I don't know, and the fact that he lied and said that they were best friends? Remember, Dr. Oziel charged the boys for going to the memorial service. He was there the whole day and he charged them for the whole day for going to this service. Does that sound like something a best friend of Jose and Kitty would do? Probably not.
Did he indicate how he was going to be of assistance other than providing lawyers? Did he have any specific business proposals in mind that he discussed with you?
He said that if we needed any money to start anything, that he could persuade them to put up the money.
If you and Dr. Oziel needed any money to start any of your joint business ventures, he would persuade them to put up the money?
Correct.
And
He saw these boys as dollar signs. That's it. In my opinion, he didn't want to help them. He could care less about them. He wanted their money. Even before, and he was, talking to Judalon and talking about all these quick get rich fast schemes. Yeah, it just makes Oziel even less credible, as if that could even happen, as if that was even possible.
other than that, did he indicate anything specific about how he was going to help them out in that regard?
To invest this money and to have, find people to handle it for them.
Did he seem excited by that prospect?
No time frame again?
Yes, prior to November 2nd, you had this conversation?
Is this before October 31st or?
Let me establish a foundation. Conversation about money initially came up around the time of the death of the parents in August of '89.
Yes.
And were the discussions about money concentrated around that time period, that is August 20th on or about?
The conversations were concentrated around the time period of the memorial service.
And did he continue to have conversations with you about this in October when Eric came in for the session on the 31st?
That's not me, that's the audio.
It came up again at that time.
All right. Now, before you went to Dr. Oziel's office on the 2nd, you said you saw him he stayed overnight. The next day got up, went to his office. And did you see him again that night? Did he come back to your house and spend the night with you?
Correct.
Was that unusual for him to be spending the night in your relationship up to that point? Had he freely spent the night with you on occasion?
No.
And
He spent... the only time he really spent the night is if he felt he was losing control of me or if he suspected I was seeing someone else.
Objection with respect to speculation on part of the witness.
Sustained the interest. Let me just inquire
Doesn't matter, the jury heard it, and that was awesome.
briefly, Mr. Bird, how much longer will your examination be?
I think I'm going to
It is Mr. Bird. Okay, I was right. Mr. Bird. At least that's what the caption says, Mr. Bird.
be a while, Your Honor. This would be a good place to break if the court would like to do that.
All right, we'll take a recess until Monday at 9 o'clock.
Judalon Smyth.
All right, I'll remind you that you're still under oath. You may continue your direct examination.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. When we were speaking yesterday or last Friday, I think it was, we were talking about a meeting you had with Dr. Oziel on November 2nd, where you were in his office. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Right. And I believe you testified that he had stayed at your house the night of November 1st. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the next day, November 2nd, did Dr. Oziel indicate to you that he had a session with Lyle and Eric Menendez?
Yes.
Did he indicate to you that he wanted you at that session?
Yes.
He testified in front of these juries that he advised you not to come and you insisted on coming against his advice. Is that true testimony?
Objection, leading insufficient.
Sustained as to the form of the question.
Did Dr. Oziel ever instruct you that he did not want you to attend a session or be in the office while he was having a session with Lyle and Eric Menendez on November 2nd?
No.
In fact, did he instruct you just the opposite,
Correct.
that he did want you there?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
What did he indicate to you about whether you should be there or not?
He wanted me there and, in fact, drove me there
Did he indicate why he wanted you there,
for the same purpose he wanted me there on October 31st,
which was what?
to be able to call the police or an ambulance if anything happened to him.
And what time was it approximately when he drove you to his office for purposes of being in the office while this session was conducted?
I believe their appointment was at 4, and we drove over to his office around 3, and then we went to Neiman's and those stores on Wilshire, and then about 3:30 he walked back to the office and he told me, well, no, it was about 3:45 he walked back to the office and he told me to wait until about 10 minutes after 4 before I came, because he didn't want them to see me be there before they were there.
And then he left you and went back to his office?
Correct.
And what did you do in the meantime?
I went shopping and bought some clothes.
And you, in fact, have credit card receipts indicating what exactly you bought and where you bought it that day?
Correct.
Where was it that you went?
The Limited?
And before you went there, Dr. Oziel was shopping with you?
Correct.
Did he seem fearful during the period of time that you two were shopping before he went to have the sessions with brothers on November 2nd?
He didn't seem any different than normal.
Was he looking over his shoulder to see if anybody was following him?
No.
Did he indicate to you anything about the Menendez brothers as you two were shopping?
I don't recall what was said.
Did he indicate to you anything in regard to what his intentions were in respect to the session he was going to have with the brothers?
Well, from the night of October 31st up to this point, he kept making a big issue about needing to get control of them.
Did he say how he wanted to get control of them?
Well, he wanted me to bug his office so that he could tape record them without them knowing it. But I told him that's not what I know how to do.
And when did he first make that suggestion to you, that he wanted you to bug his office?
The night of October 31st?
Did you know how to bug an office?
No.
Did you have some equipment in your business that allowed you to bug offices?
No.
Did he think you did?
Sustained.
Your business at that time was tape duplication.
Correct.
And had you done work for governmental agencies up to that time,
Correct.
including the FBI,
Correct.
the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office?
The U.S. Attorney's Office.
And he suggested to you that he wanted you to bug his office for the session with the boys, with the Menendez brothers?
Correct.
And what was your reply to that?
That I don't know how to do that. And then he said, well, he would have to figure out a way to get them to agree to make a tape recording
Did he say why he wanted a tape recording made?
for our protection.
Did he also mention, you said something about control, he wanted to get control. When did he make that statement?
He made that statement many times from October 31st on.
And did he say why he wanted control?
Control. Power. What do you want?
I don't recall if he was giving a reason. He was just saying that he had to get control of them.
And on November 2nd, did he indicate to you anything about tape recording the session on that date?
He wasn't going to, I mean, he was going to start working on them to make them agreeable to making a tape.
Did he say how he was going to work on them to do that?
No.
And had he ever worked on you to get you to do something that you didn't want to do up to that point in time?
Projection and relevance.
Sustained.
When you got done shopping, did you go back to Dr. Oziel's office?
Yes.
And approximately what time was it when you arrived in the office?
Probably about 4:20, 4:30.
And when you arrived, was anyone in the office?
In the waiting room?
Yes.
No.
So what did you do at that point?
I sat down in the waiting room and waited.
And explain what happened next.
After a little while, I believe it was Dr. Munjak and Dr. Phillips left. And then after they had left and no one else was in the offices, then I went to check to see if their offices were open or not.
And were they open?
The office that normally, I think the office that normally, that Laurel would use was open.
Laurel Oziel, Dr. Oziel's wife?
Correct.
And did you go into Mrs. Oziel's office?
Was she a therapist too?
I just don't really recall all the times from November 2nd up to December 11th kind of got squished together.
All right. Well, let me ask you in general, did you overhear any First of all, did you see the Menendez brothers at all that day? Visually see them anywhere?
Yes.
When did you see them?
When they left?
And were you in the waiting room when you saw them?
Yes.
Before they left, did you hear either Eric or Lau Menendez make any statements?
I believe that I picked up bits and pieces of things whenever I would go in to check, to kind of like hear how things were going.
And could you hear any yelling? On November 2nd?
I don't believe so.
What were the bits and pieces you were able to pick up?
It's hard for me to think of them.
Let me ask you this. After the October 31st session, did Dr. Oziel tell you word for word what had been said to him in the session that he had with Lyle and Eric Menendez?
After the October 31st?
Yes.
Yes.
In other words, while you were in the office with him after the brothers had left, did he tell you what he claimed the brothers had said?
Yes.
And was that a detailed discussion where he was telling you everything, or was he just summarizing?
No, he told me everything, and he went over and over and over it for several days. I mean, he just would talk about that.
All right. And up to the point when you were there on November 2nd, had he gone over it and over it and over it several times
Correct.
as to the details of what he claimed to have heard?
Correct.
And did you hear anything yourself on November 2nd that you can now say, I overheard either one of the brothers say anything, as opposed to what Dr. Oziel told you he said he overheard
At what point? You
on
said-
November 2nd?
Well, let's establish whether Dr. Oziel told her anything after November 2nd. You covered the October 31st session.
Did Dr. Oziel continue to tell details of what had been said to him by the Menendez brothers after November 2nd?
Yes.
And up to the point of November 2nd? And at any point in time before or after that, can you tell, without telling us what Dr. Oziel said to you, what you personally heard on November 2nd?
The meetings from November 2nd through this up until December 11th are all pushed together, so I don't really know how to say what was on November 2nd and what was on another day, because there was several times.
Are you able to distinguish in your own mind things that you overheard and things that Dr. Oziel told you at any point in time?
Sometimes.
And can you tell me anything that you personally overheard on November 2nd?
In the session,
Yes.
I just don't know how to attach them to the date.
After you saw Lyle and Eric Menendez on November 2nd, did they leave? When they came out of Dr. Oziel's office?
Yes.
Was there any conversation in your presence?
Yes.
And what was the conversation?
All three of them were laughing and talking about Hawaii. And Oziel turned to me and said, do you have any recommendations of, where to stay in Hawaii? These lucky guys are, going to Hawaii. And I just was like, no. And so it was just conversation about them going to Hawaii.
And did Dr. Oziel seem fearful at that point in time when he was having this conversation?
No, they were all three of them very friendly.
And after the brothers left, did Dr. Oziel say anything to you about whether or not he had the brothers under control?
Yes.
What did he say?
He said that he felt that he was getting control of them.
Did he indicate he would have to do anything further to get further control of them?
Yes, he still wanted to get the tape.
And did he discuss with you how he was going to go about doing that?
He said that he was telling them that the tape would be for their benefit, that if they ever got caught, that he would be their only ally, that he would be the only person who could get them off, and that they would need to have this tape recording in order to prove.
And I want to get struck for swearing, but fuck this guy. Fuck Dr. Oziel so hard. Wow. He just wants to blackmail these boys. It's so evident. It's so clear to me. In order to prove. And then he uses it like, well, but I'll be their savior. I'll be the one to help them through this. And I'll help you through all of your problems and blah, blah, blah. I'll protect you from these boys and whatever. But after I make you totally fearful of them. It's ridiculous.
To a jury that, that they were remorseful
the
or whatever. And so he was he was telling them that they needed to make this tape for their benefit. And to me, he was telling me that we needed to have them make this tape. And
No, move this, so I can't. Everything after the meeting, speculation on
Why don't you establish these words expressed?
Yes. You just indicated to us what Oziel said he was telling the boys. Did he also make a statement to you about what his true intentions were?
yes,
What did he say?
that he needed to get them to say incriminating things on tape so that we would have the tape to protect us.
And did he specify
Blackmail.
what he meant by protect you?
Absolutely blackmail.
Because he was then going to, he told them this on November 2nd, that he had notes and tape recordings that were with all his lawyers, and that if anything happened to him suspiciously, if he died or something, that those records would be released.
Now, not on November 2nd, but later on in November, did he also tell you that a tape could be of use to him in working out a certain problem that he had with his wife and you in terms of your relationship?
Well, I'm not sure if this directly relates about the tape, but he said that this was a blessing. That,
What was a blessing?
Lyle and Eric killing their parents and coming to him, because now it placed, he could use this to tell Laurel's family and his family that it was for her safety that they were getting a divorce.
And that, my friends, is how you use a situation to your benefit. You're going to say, oh, yeah, it's a blessing that this happened. And these boys just fell right into my lap. And this whole scenario just fell right into my lap. And it helps me. And this is how it's going to help me. This narcissistic piece of shit. Dr. Oziel is. Ugh.
And that was a discussion you had with him in November?
Correct.
Had you two discussed him getting a divorce?
He had told me within the first few phone calls that he was actually living separately and in the middle of a divorce.
Liar.
And do you remember being at your house on November 25th when he called you up at a point in time when you were watching a movie?
Yes.
And do you remember on November 25th in a conversation, first of all, you recorded two conversations which took place on the 25th?
Yes.
And do you remember that you had a conversation with Dr. Oziel at a point in time when you were watching a movie called Grapes of Wrath? And he said to you, Anyway, this was nighttime, so I'll let you watch Grapes of Wrath, and I'll talk to you a little later, and then tomorrow I'll see you, and Sunday I'll see you, and Monday I'll see you, and we'll get married on Tuesday, so that's it. And you replied, you're teasing me. And he replied, well, it would be nice if we could. I was supposed to have a talk with Laurel tonight, actually, about just what to do and how to divide things up and what to do. So I'll talk to you in a bit. She's just walking in now. And you said, okay. And he said, talk to you later. Do you remember that conversation?
Yes,
And that's a conversation which you recorded on your answering machine, correct?
correct.
And then that same evening, he called you back to follow up on his conversation that he had with his wife about getting a divorce, correct?
Correct.
Have a tape on record.
Yes. All right, we'll take a recess and give the lawyers a chance to confer about some matters among themselves. We'll resume at 1:45, ladies and gentlemen. Anyone will resume at 1:45.
Your Honor, in light of the failure of recollection and specifics of what you heard on November 2nd, I would ask the court for the prior recorded testimony of Smyth, which occurred in front of Judge Albrecht. I think that would be the best way of establishing the facts that you know she referred to, especially in an affidavit from that. So we're going to be asking for that either now or at the conclusion of the testimony.
Before Judge Albrecht, is that it?
That's correct.
All right, the matter has previously been discussed. Is there anything further you wanted to add?
No, I think we made our arguments to the court in writing, and we're
Okay,
prepared to submit that issue.
All right, prior to the completion of her testimony, I will again review that testimony before Judge Albrecht and make a determination as to whether it's something that must be disclosed to the prosecution for a full and complete hearing in this matter. So I will do that prior to her testimony being completed. Because since I don't know everything she's going to say until she says it, it's hard for me to review that material to make a determination independent of the arguments already made by the parties as to why the transcript should be made available to the prosecution. All right, we'll be in recess until the counsel have a chance to continue discussing the use of the various tape recordings and/or transcripts that the defense will be using during further examination of the witness.
Could I inquire about the note that we received? I'm concerned, given the state of health that was revealed in that note. That
Well, there's this juror who has some flu-type symptoms and wants to see a doctor today, and we have another juror on the blue jury who has requested to be released today at 3 o'clock to go to a doctor too, so perhaps we can work it out so both can go at the same time. But obviously we're going to see if the juror can hold out, and I will be able to confer with the juror on that.
Is it the other Emerson who wants to go?
No, someone else. Okay, we'll be in recess until counsel can confer.
one of the tapes, this is one of the December tapes where he says, I represent reality. I represent love and acceptance for you as a person, but clear displeasure when things you do are not really reasonable and are not thoughtful and not sensitive and not kind and not sharing and not giving, but not a rejection of you as a person. Not someone who says you're a horrible, terrible human being, and not someone who doesn't stand by your side, and someone who says you're not fit to be with, and not someone who says you're horrible, awful human being, and you're terrible, and you should be murdered, and whatever. And then he goes on in this long declarative statement to tell Miss Smyth and then about her family, and then he said he's talking about her mother in the same conversation, and he says, your mother is the witch with the poison apple in your life, and I'm going to be very serious. That's the person you're afraid is always going to kill you, and why you can't eat apples. The reason you can't eat an apple is not because of what that old woman or whoever that person was. It's not why you still can't eat an apple. It's because you're still waiting for your mother, who's still alive, to poison you. And there are other passages in these same tapes, and it's a theory of the defense, and it's this kind of suggestion, and these types of theories, which are very similar to what ends up on the December 11th tape in terms of this putting the mother out of her misery that's on the tapes, and it's
Wow.
those are Oziel fabrications, and that these tapes support that it was part of his method to suggest these types of theories to people that he was consulting with.
And I suppose you're
So basically, turn you against all the people in your life that are there for you, and I'm the only one here for you. Oh, sounds like a total narcissistic move to me. That's exactly what a narcissist would do. Make you have it, make you separated from your family and friends, the people that love you and want to help you. And then the narcissist takes you all to themselves and gives these reasons why, constantly putting her down and berating her, but saying, I'm not saying you're the worst person ever, even though you're totally a disappointment to me, basically, is what he's just said. So there's that.
in a position to prove that whatever he said was untrue.
So I'm kind of on the borderline that like Jose and Kitty and Dr. Oziel are almost in the same realm of using and abusing their power and their status in life to get things for them, to use people in their way. There's a little bit of a difference between the two.
On that tape.
Yes, she would testify that her mother is not a witch and she wasn't trying to poison her.
And we could perhaps have some testimony about the witness's relationship with her mother.
No, I don't think so, Your Honor. I think the tape speaks for itself. I think the theory on its face is ridiculous, and I don't think it involves litigation outside the tape itself. I don't think that the people are going to make an issue of that or question Judalon Smyth along the lines of, isn't it true that your mother, in fact, was a witch? I think that's a hypothetical that isn't facing the court in this situation.
Okay, or that she never described her mother in that fashion to Dr. Oziel or any of that nature, that whatever she might have told Dr. Oziel would cause him to form any opinions about their relationship that would never come out.
I can't imagine that that would be a theory of cross-examination, but if it was, I don't think that that would involve an undue consumption of time.
All right, the court, having heard this offer of proof, finds that the probative value is virtually non-existent from the offer made here, and that it would consume an undue amount of time, confuse issues, and be unduly prejudicial.
We would ask the court to for permission to mark the tape so that they're on the record.
Well, bear in mind, I haven't heard it. I've heard your offer of proof, and that's all that's before me.
Well, I'm trying to expedite it, but I'm asking the court to listen to the tape as part of our offer of proof. I've summarized in a few sentences what the highlights of that particular tape are, but I'd like at the appropriate time to have the court, before this witness is dismissed, to have been in a position to have listened to the tape and said that it has no or little probative value.
I'll
That's the court's ruling.
be certainly happy to permit you to expand your offer of proof, and by offering the tape as something for the court to listen to, and when we get to a break, I'll be glad to listen to it if you provide me with the tape and the recorder.
All right.
Is that exhibit 338 now?
I don't know. It wouldn't be 338 because we've already had a tape. Well, that was the tape that you were marking at the break. It was 338. Was that the one that you
338, I
referred
believe
to?
there's no objection to. Is that correct?
What is the date of the tape of 338?
338 is a tape that was made on November 25th, 1989, and it contains the statement by Dr. Oziel asking Smyth to call up his wife and disguise her voice as Eric Menendez and threaten to kill her.
Okay, that was a tape that was discussed in the subject of cross-examination of Dr. Oziel at the time he was on the witness stand.
Correct, Your Honor, and we had marked as exhibit number 119 a partial portion of that tape,
Right.
and we now have the complete tape.
Okay.
I want to hear it.
Then the tape that you wanted to have the court listen to, which was an expansion on your offer of proof, that was which?
We haven't had that marked.
39 then. Do you have that? Can you give it to the
I do,
clerk?
and Your Honor, instead of marking that as an exhibit, I think what I'd like to do is provide the court with a transcript to be marked at a later time. If we could do that, I think that would expedite it.
All right, then you want to mark the transcript now? Or you don't have it with you? Or?
I have it, but what I'd like to do is organize the ones that the court, we need to make an offer of proof, and I think I can do that more efficiently over the lunch hour.
Okay, sure. Okay. So we will not mark 339 at this point. Be superseded by some other exhibit. Anything else now before we resume?
Well, Your Honor, there's two more things. One is the December 89 tape where, again, Mr. Burt's theory is that this shows Dr. Lewis's analysis of the family relationship between Judalon Smyth and her parents or her mother, and would be the same objection as the one before. I think Mr. Burt might want to make an offer of proof. And then the last one is a portion of the tape from March the 8th of 90 that Mr. Burt showed me on the transcript after the read of the court. Now, our definition is totally irrelevant and pretty much meaningless because you just read the word, it was a word, there's no content.
I can't understand her.
Something that Mr. Burt will provide to the court in transcript form. I assume that's what he's referring to.
Yes, I will do that.
Right.
And then, as to March the 8th, Mr. Burt, do you have the portion of the transcript that you showed to me, so you guys can read?
Yes, it's a 10-page transcript. I can provide that to the court right now if the court would like to review it, or we could do it at a later time. It's along the same lines as the tape we just discussed.
Okay, perhaps we can just put them all together at the same time and I'll
That's
do them all at once. We do have more information regarding the one juror who has indicated that she is ill today and she would like to leave at approximately 2 o'clock to attend to a medical appointment. We have another juror who wanted to leave at 3 o'clock to go to a medical appointment. It's unfortunate that we have unfortunate for the jurors as well when they get sick, and there's nothing we can really do about it. Had we in the past excused each juror who had to be sick for half a day or whatever, have to go to a medical appointment, we would not have any alternate jurors left, and we'd probably have eaten into the 12 on each panel. We would have. That's why we have the alternate jurors, and that's why we have tried to accommodate these minor deviations in our schedule so that we can maintain a substantial number of alternate jurors until we get to the end of the case and when we really need them. I don't know if we're at that point yet where I want to start excusing people for half a day if we can deal with it by doing other things during the time that juror is absent. It's unclear as to whether or not she goes to the doctor. That would clear everything up. It might be that she would be unavailable tomorrow. I don't know.
Your Honor, could we work perhaps into the lunch hour and then?
Yeah, I'm thinking of just doing that so that we can get more time. It still might not be sufficient to complete this witness's testimony. I don't know how long it is,
I
but
don't think so.
I certainly encourage counsel to focus on the relevant issues in the case rather than some of the collateral matters that might otherwise be the focus of your examination. Are you ready then to proceed with the witness?
Yes.
Okay, let's get the juries in and we'll proceed.
Ms. Smith, Dr. Oziel had testified that after a couple of months in your relationship, you had developed a fixation on him and that he was trying to get away from you. Do you recall that testimony?
Objection, argument.
Sustained.
After several months of your relationship with Dr. Oziel, did you develop a fixation on him?
No.
And after several months of your relationship, was there a situation where you were constantly harassing and trying to contact Dr. Oziel and he in turn was trying to get away from you?
Not at all. It was the opposite.
And was there a period of time in November where there was a mutual, how should I put it, relationship going on at that time, where you were both expressing feelings of love and affection toward each other?
In November?
Yes.
In November, I was slipping into something called the Stockholm Syndrome.
Were you in November, did you feel that you were in love with him?
It just calls it right out and says it's the Stockholm Syndrome, meaning she was starting to have feelings for him, but really it's not real feelings. It was feelings because, you sometimes fall for your abuser, and that seems to be what is happening here, at least in her description.
More in December.
And
In November, he became my lifeline. After the confessions, he became my lifeline. If I didn't please him, and if he didn't love me, then I was going to end up dead.
And why did you think you were going to end up dead?
Because he told me.
And did he say how you were going to end up dead?
Yes, he said that he would call Lyle and Eric and tell them that I had been outside the door and that I knew and that I was wanting to go to the police and that they would kill me.
And was his telling you that tied in with his statements to you that he wanted to maintain a romantic relationship with you?
Yes.
Did you respond?
He threatens to tell Eric and Lyle that she knows, just to keep her in line, just to keep her under his control. What a piece of garbage.
To that? In other words, were you in any way receptive to his statements?
I don't quite understand what you mean by that.
Well, were you expressing to him in November or even afterwards some feeling of affection toward him?
Oh, yes. I had to make him feel and believe that I loved and adored him. If I didn't, then there was no use for me to be alive as far as he was concerned.
For instance, there were some cards marked in evidence in your handwriting where you are expressing feelings of love and affection for Dr. Oziel. Are you familiar with those cards?
Yes.
And those are written over a period of time, were they not?
Yes.
Right. Now, the tape-recorded statements that Dr. Oziel made on your answering machine, when you went to the police in March of 1990, did you make Detective Zoller aware of the fact that you had tape-recorded messages with Dr. Oziel's voice on it?
Yes, I did.
And did you, in fact, provide copies of all the tape-recorded statements that you had from Dr. Oziel to the Beverly Hills Police Department?
Yes, I did.
And after you did that, or at about the same time that you did that, did the Beverly Hills Police Department encourage you to continue to tape telephone conversations with Dr. Oziel?
Yes.
And did they, in fact, provide you with some equipment to do that?
Yes, they did.
And as far as you know, you provided all the tape-recorded statements that you had with Dr. Oziel's voice on it in March of 1990, correct?
Correct.
Now, I think before the break, you were testifying about a series of conversations you had with Dr. Oziel on November 25th when you were home watching a movie.
Yes.
Do you remember that? And do you remember that he called you while you were watching the movie and said he'd call you back later because he had to have a talk with his wife?
Yes.
And did he, in fact, call you back later on the night of November 25th after the movie was over?
Yes.
And did you have a conversation with him, which was tape-recorded, concerning the problem he was having with his wife and the divorce and other topics?
Yes.
And I want you to listen to what I've had marked as Exhibit 38, which is a deception board.
Hold on, let me slow it down. It's just easier to hear it, even though you really can't hear it very well.
Make it longer. Let it amplify.
I have no idea what was that.
I'm glad that you called. About 10 minutes ago.
Oh, pretty good timing. Let's see, a few things. One, we're trying to figure out what to do
everyone looked like they were laughing or pleased, like not pleased, but like amused by this conversation. Whatever Zeal was doing, he was singing to her. But look at Leslie Abramson. She's like, mm-mm, I'm not falling for this crap.
And it's the whole movie, huh?
No, that was a hit. Just have a hit song, not from movie. It's just goes to intelligence and well. She's sitting right over there. I was the best of the
Now she's laughing at
I'll walk up and embrace her. But I'm ashamed to face her. Just touch you, say hello. Just touch you, say hello. Just touch you, and she'll know. Don't blue. Love just between. Here, this English Christmas songs, you know that?
I know, I like the Menendez Christmas
Yeah,
album.
well, you come say, you come say, you come that, I'm gonna say, let's say a couple other things. One other thing, okay, something I was thinking of, what was I thinking of? Something, shit, I can't remember.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, what was
We're gonna put you on president.
No, it has something to do with something that was in the paper. Yeah, something that was advertised. Oh, Twisties has this is way cheaper than you can buy it if you ever need anything. They have Polaroid VHS tape. Okay?
What is Polaroid VHS tape?
It's just standard, 246 T122. Okay?
Oh,
Ready? 246 items, ready?
okay.
259.
Very cheap. It's cheaper than I did have.
That's what I said, no limit. And Leo has a 279 for Sony. No limit.
Amazing.
So you should buy some if you ever sell it. Or use it. Because it's cheaper than you can buy it.
That's true.
You can walk in the city and buy it cheap, you can buy it in the hood store.
That's true.
Because they buy it from all the scooters. I told you you could buy it. But I first told you we could do video tapes up because I could get the cheap estimate, so I could get a cheaper retail. You said, nah, I told you. So they buy hundreds of thousands of cases. That's gone down in price. Because you use so much of it. Anyway, well, I was trying to think of what to get you for Christmas, because there's so many things I can get you that you don't have. I just don't really know what you really want. Like I could get you a really neat new stereo VHS setup, the stereo sound and all that, if you're into movies, I could do that. Or I could get you, you don't have a really good stereo system, which you should have. I could get you hundreds of things. What do you know?
I don't know what he's saying, but he's saying the only thing I can hear right now is I can get you something, something. I can get you a lot of things. So he's using like what he can do for her as a reason to keep her around. Disgusting.
Okay, I'll get you anything.
Every day.
What do you want? Presents. I don't know what you want. You can't have your clothes because we don't know your sizes for anything. You never gave me your sizes.
Do you want a my size?
I do not. I don't know your sizes in tops. I don't know your sizes in bottoms. I don't know your sizes in pants. I don't know your dress size. I don't know anything.
I'm like a size 6.
You're not size 6 in everything. It's maybe in a dress. What are you in a top? What are you in a bottom? What are you in a...
Small and tall.
Okay, Mr. Burt, why don't you turn it off?
Small, medium.
But you can't say small or medium. One's right, one's wrong. See if I can buy clothes for her.
All right.
Why did he tell him to turn it off?
You have Exhibit 119?
Can we approach a bench?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm basically good for each other.
So good, Rachel. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Sure, good nature, though. But the thing is, tomorrow is the reason that half of the day is supposed to be screwed up tomorrow is that there's 2 weddings coming up with 2 patients who were treated for a combined total of 2 years. And we're supposed to buy wedding presents to the patients. And then it's like a Hanukkah gift, Christmas buying time. So I was going to take the morning to that because I supposed to, some of that was there. And then we're talking about what to do. And we're figuring out moving things, and we're trying to figure out what to do in terms of houses and money and splitting up with attorneys and all that tonight. And I told her buying quarterback, she wasn't too impressed. She thought it was an arrow. I could have told the city, she don't believe me. She said, no, quarterback is my city. I said, yes, it is too. It's in Arizona, but it's by California. Cerca de la frontera. Anyway.
So how's the discussion going?
She's got a wild about it.
Well, she'll never be wild about it, and I'm sorry for her. But
You're ruthless.
no, this decision has nothing to do with me.
You pressure me every single minute of every single hour. You're so funny. It has nothing to do with you.
You decided it before you knew me.
Yeah, but I didn't decide to do it like 7 months early because you couldn't stand to be one day without me.
Well, but also it's for my own safety.
You're right. It's because you want to move in. You're so funny.
Well, yeah, I don't need safety.
I don't need safety. It's so funny. Yeah. She's not really wild about any of this. To put it mildly.
But it's for our own safety.
Yeah, well, she doesn't seem to need any more safety than you do, according to her.
I know that you made this decision long before I came along.
Well, she's waiting for the 8 months to go by. She doesn't think she needs any more safety either. She feels these guys are not a danger anymore at all.
Agreed.
Well, I don't agree with that.
Well, I think you should call up and you should use one of your disguise voices. Hello, Laurel. This is Eric. You're in trouble. I'm going to kill you. That's me.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think that you're, they're nuts.
Gee, took you a long time to get to that. That was pretty straightforward.
They're crazy.
That's true. She's sitting right over there. I know that face anyway. I'd look up and embrace her, but I'm ashamed to face her. Just tell her Jim said hello.
I mean, even now since you told her own family, isn't her own family encouraging her?
No.
I thought they were.
No, not anymore. Anyway, well, let me get off and see what I can accomplish here.
Okay. So what time are you thinking about tomorrow?
Well, like maybe about 1.
Okay.
She got some stuff to do anyway,
Okay.
don't you?
Yeah.
Doing the things you need to do.
Yeah.
if I call you real early in the morning and get you up?
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out tonight what to do. We're still arguing about this stuff. We're not arguing like negatively. We're just dealing with what to do. I had to get her to cancel 2 things for Sunday she plans, otherwise I wouldn't be able to see her. So we have to figure out what to do about this planning stuff. We gotta talk about your family. And the next week your dad will be here. Isn't it?
Yeah, but that's okay. I mean, my daddy can...
No, I don't mean that, but next week he's going to be here when?
He's coming the 30th.
Which is what time? What day?
I think it's Thursday.
Is it next Thursday?
It's either Thursday or Friday. It's something like that.
Well, today is the 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th. So yeah, Thursday. What time is he coming?
I don't know. I have to look.
Well, look.
I think...
Smith, the last portion of that tape, where Dr. Oziel says, well, today is the 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th. Does that date the tape for you as November 25th,
Yes.
1989? In fact, did your father arrive here on November 30th, 1989?
Yes, he did.
Now, did Dr. Oziel sound frightened on that tape to you?
Objection calls for a few please on part of this.
Had you ever heard Dr. Oziel when he was frightened?
No, he always was the same.
And was there anything unusual about the way his voice was on that tape from when it was when he was normally talking to you about things other than the Menendez brothers?
No?
On the tape, at one point, he indicates, I can't remember, and you say, we're going to put you on Prozac. Do you recall that portion of the tape?
Yes.
And what were you referring to about putting him on Prozac?
Well,
Sustained.
Had Dr. Oziel put you on Prozac at the time, before this tape was made?
Objection relevant.
Sustained.
Could I approach a bench on this, Your Honor?
I'll go on to something else.
Right. And also on the tape, you ask him, how's the discussion going? What discussion were you referring to when you asked that question?
the discussion about their divorce and their settlement.
And he indicates she's not real wild about it. What did you take that to mean?
That she's not wild about the divorce.
And then he says, this decision has nothing to do with me. Which decision were you referring to?
Their decision to divorce had nothing to do with me. They had decided to divorce long before he ever spoke to me.
Right, and then he says, you decided before you knew me. You say you decided before you knew me, and he says, yeah, but I didn't decide to do it like 7 months early because you couldn't stand to be one day without me. What were you referring to when you said he had decided before he knew you?
When I first spoke to him on the phone, he represented that they lived separately and that they were in the middle of a divorce. Then
Guaranteed that's a lie.
later, I discovered that they were still living in the same house. And
probably still acting like husband and wife, and you were just the mistress, unfortunately. He lied. He lied to all of you. He treated women like they were his playthings.
I was very resistant to any involvement until he had Laurel on the phone say that they were getting a divorce, but that then she gave a reason, they gave reasons why they were still living in the same house, but that they were getting a divorce. And that they were, in June of '89, he said that it was about 7 or 8 months away from being finalized. And then he...
In other words, that means it never got started.
Kept changing it every month. It always stayed 7 months.
Right. And then on the tape, you say, what about, quote, it's for her own safety, end quote. What were you referring to there?
Well, you have to understand Jerry Oziel's fantasies about how irresistible he is to women and how all women want him and can't live without him. And his fantasy was that she doesn't want the divorce and that she would give up her life for him and do anything. His fantasy was that I desperately wanted them to be divorced and that I would give up my life and do anything for him, and that you have no concern for yourself, but all your concern is always for him. That's why, like on the tape, when he asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and I said, just you, because first of all, he's not a terribly generous person to start with. And he wants to think that he's the most important, the only thing in every woman's life who encounters him.
But how does this relate to
And that is a very telltale sign of a narcissist.
the statement, what about it's for her own safety?
Because he had said earlier, he had said, what a blessing it was that Lyle and Eric had killed their parents and that they had come to him with this because it provided him with the opportunity to make their families understand that they were getting divorced because it was for Laurel and the children's safety. He never wants to look like the bad guy.
For their
Also, very typical with narcissists, they're very concerned about public image and how they look to other people. So I'm not surprised that he would need a proper excuse as to why he was divorcing Laurel.
their safety in terms of getting a divorce would be for their safety?
Because that if they continue to stay married, that they might end up dead.
In other words, she was at risk by being associated with him.
Yes, just as I was, but I couldn't express concern for my own safety because the one time that I did, that was that first weekend of November, and I was put through the most horrifying, terrifying 2 days of my life.
And he said, you say, I know, but you made this decision long before I came along. You're referring to the divorce?
Yes.
And then he replies, yes, she's waiting for the 8 months to go by. She doesn't think she needs any more safety either. She feels the guys are not a danger anymore at all. And what did you take the guys, who was he referring to there?
He always referred to Lyle and Eric as the guys or the boys.
And then you respond, no, I don't agree with that. What weren't you agreeing with?
I didn't agree that we weren't, that there was no more danger.
And why didn't you think there was any more danger? Based on something you heard or based on something Oziel told you?
Because whenever I would start to be comfortable and the fear aspect for me would loosen up, then Oziel would suddenly demonstrate all these, fear behavior things and continue to tell me how much danger I was in. And then when I would get real fearful and be afraid to open my door, then he would get like this, where he would be laughing and there's no more danger. And so it was like whatever phase I would be in, he would flip to the opposite. It was very crazy making.
And you say, I don't agree with that, and then his response to your statement is, well, I think you should call up and you should use one of your disguised voices. Hello, Laurel, this is Eric. You're in trouble. I'm going to kill you. Had you used disguised voices up to that point?
Never.
Had he?
Yes, Oziel has many disguised voices.
And you see on that tape he's doing his Elvis imitation, correct?
He does think he's Elvis.
And there are other tapes where he's disguising his voice as someone else, correct?
Yes, he has many ethnic voices that he uses.
All right. And so did you know what he was talking about when he said, I think you should call up and you should use one of your disguised voices and say, hello, Eric. Hello, Laurel, this is Eric. You're in trouble. I'm going to kill you.
Objection, relevant.
You get a question right back, please. First question.
Question, and so did you know what he was talking about when he said, quote, I think you should call up and use one of your disguised voices and say, hello, Laurel?
Objection overruled. You may ask your question.
Oziel projects onto the other person what he himself does or is guilty of. So he's the
Another telltale sign of a narcissist.
one who does the disguised voices. He's the one who makes these, makes threatening phone calls using disguised voices. And he's just doing his typical thing where he projects it onto, in this case, he's talking to me. So he's projecting it onto me, but that's really what he's thinking, what he wants, what he may indeed have done.
Now, he's indicating here that you should call up Laurel and tell Laurel you're Eric and you're going to kill her, correct?
Yes, that's what he's saying.
And was the idea here, so far as you understood, to put her in fear so that she would think the divorce was a good idea to get away from the fear generated by your calling her up and using your disguised voice?
Objection, call for speculation.
Like, what a little weasel. He can't even tell his wife he wants a divorce. He has to make his mistress call her and threaten to end her life in order for it to be justified that he's divorcing his wife, because otherwise it's not on him. It can't be his fault. So it's got to be some other reason. What a jerk.
Besides making this suggestion to you that you should call up Laurel and say you were Eric and you were going to kill her, were there other occasions where he would threaten you personally or make some joke about he was going to call Lyle up and tell Lyle to kill you?
Yes, he did.
In situations where he wanted you to do something.
Yes.
That tape I marked that's next to it.
Are we at 339?
339. Smith, I want to just play you a very brief portion of this tape. It starts in the middle.
Mr. Burke, do we have a date? Approximate date?
Showing you this tape, which is designated as tape number 4. Do you know when that tape was made? That sometime in November?
Yeah, it would be in November.
Do you know the precise date it was made?
I don't recall the precise date at this moment.
If I told you that on this tape there is an indication that your father was going to be there approximately a week, would that refresh your memory or help you date the tape?
Then it would be around the 26th, 25th, something like, no, maybe a little before that. He was due in on November 30th, so 7 days prior to that, I guess.
Just want to play you a small portion.
I want you to pick because I want it to be from
She sounds like a little kid on the phone. Her voice is so high pitched. She's like Betty Boop or a little kid.
you.
Well, who do you think it came from? Elvis Presley?
Yeah. And I'm going to write the Inquirer and tell them.
Elvis is alive. And singing songs in my bedroom. That's good. I'll put you away in the loony bin for sure.
I'll send them a videotape.
You're right. I'll kill you. Either that or I'll just leave a message for Lyle.
All right, you're joking there about Elvis Presley, and he said,
I'll just leave a message for Lyle. Hold on one second. I'm going to tend to the dogs. All right, I'm back. Sorry.
I'll kill you. Either that or else I'll leave a message for Lyle.
Yes.
Did you take that as a joke? It sounds like a joke on the tape, does it not?
Well, he does joke like that a lot. And when in the beginning stages, I mean, this is just a random thing, and this is quite some time into it. In the beginning stages, when he would make those jokes, I would take them very seriously and get very upset. And then in return, he would get angry and upset with me because I reacted that way. So it came to a point.
Never have a feeling around a narcissist, because whatever you're feeling, it doesn't matter. The narcissist's feelings are the ones that matter, not yours. So never tell a narcissist you're feeling some way, because it doesn't matter.
Point where when he started making jokes like that, I knew that my cue was I have to laugh and pretend like, yes, this is a joke. But in the back of my mind, I really felt like he was just trying to remind me of the threat and the danger that
The power and control. Let's reword that. The power and control that he has over her. Because it worked the first time, making her fearful of these boys and threatening to say something to the boys that she knows them, or that knew about them, and was in their in the session recording. Make no mistake, the threat and the danger is coming from Dr. Oziel, not the boys.
he had in his power over me.
Now, did he keep the danger in front of you in more serious ways than what's revealed on that tape?
Yes.
And after you were in his office on November 2nd, did he take you out of town that following weekend, which would have been the weekend of November 4th?
Yes.
And where did he take you?
To Newport Beach.
And on the way to Newport Beach, did you have a discussion about whether you were in danger?
Yes.
And what was the discussion?
He kept saying that that he believed that he didn't have as much control over the brothers as he thought he had, and that now he was thinking that he was going to have to liquidate everything and leave California. And that, of course, Laurel and the children couldn't go because he would be so endangered and he would probably be tracked down, and that he wouldn't expect to put me or Laurel or the children in that kind of danger. He wanted to pick up a bathing suit.
And so you went from your home back to his to pick up a bathing suit on the 4th?
Yes.
Did he indicate to you that he was fearful of coming to his house because the Menendez brothers might be lurking around? And up to you about the brothers were going to kill you, or words to that effect?
Yes.
Did he do that seriously and in a joking manner?
Yes.
How would it come up when he was threatening you with the brothers?
You mean when it was serious?
Yes.
Whenever I basically displeased him or wasn't doing or reacting the way he wanted me to react, then he would say, wow, what a bizarre reaction, and I don't know if I can have a relationship with someone who would have that kind of reaction, and maybe I should just call Lyle and Eric and tell them you were outside the door so that I won't have to be bothered with you now.
And did you also hear him threaten to use the Menendez brothers against other people he was having problems with?
Yes, he did.
And who specifically did he threaten to use the Menendez brothers against, or the threat of the Menendez brothers?
He said that he was going to have Lyle and Eric kill a man named Richard Klein.
And was that in relation to some problem that Dr. Oziel was having with Richard Klein over a business called Automax?
Yes.
And he said that in your presence?
Yes.
Now, did you attend other sessions at Dr. Oziel's office where the Menendez brothers were there?
I believe so.
And do you recall specific dates when you were there?
No, the only two specific dates I could come up with was October 31st and November 2nd. I felt like there was about, when I went to the police, I told them I thought that there was about 4 or 5 sessions before I became excluded.
And do you remember telling the police that you were present at a session on November 14th?
I don't remember saying November 14th now, but they were pressing me to come up with dates, and I spoke with my neighbor who for one of the sessions had driven me there and dropped me off. And I asked him, and I believe he told me November 14th was one of the dates.
All right, and you in turn told the police you were there on November 14th?
Yes, I then told
And
them.
if I told you that Dr. Oziel's billing records do not show any session on November 14th, would that refresh your memory as to whether you were in fact there or not on that date?
I don't know any of the date. The only dates I can absolutely be positive of are October 31st and November 2nd.
Did you have discussion with Dr. Oziel about a tape that was made on December 11th?
Understand the question? Did you ever talk to Oziel about the taping of December 11th?
Yes.
And when did you have a conversation with him about a tape-recorded session that took place on the 11th?
Well, there were several of them, but are you talking about the discussion on the 11th?
No, let's talk about before the 11th, when he first discussed with you the possibility of taping a session.
Well, from the beginning, he wanted to get them on tape.
All right. And did you mentioned before that he asked you to perhaps bug his office?
Yes.
Did he continue to express an interest in getting the Menendez brothers on tape?
Yes.
And did that interest continue right up to the date of December 11th?
Yes, it did.
And as it got closer to December 11th, did he indicate to you that he had a plan or an intention of meeting with them and taping them on the 11th?
Yes.
What did he say in that regard?
He needed to borrow a tape recorder. He asked me for a tape recorder. And so my father and I drove out to his house where we met Laurel, and we gave him the tape recorder. And then Oziel and my father and I went to lunch. And this was the first time that I was being excluded, or that he wasn't asking me to be there. And so, of course, I expressed concern about
Let me
him.
stop you for a minute. What date was this that you had lunch with him and your father?
On December 11th.
And did he call you the morning of the 11th and indicate he wanted to borrow a tape recorder? Or did he call you before that?
It was
date?
prior to that that he, that he asked to borrow the tape recorder.
And it was on the 11th that you took the tape recorder to him?
Correct.
And you had lunch with him?
Correct.
And did he indicate anything to you in regard to his plan for taping a session?
He said that this would be, that he needed to get them to say incriminating things so that he would have this tape as our protection.
And did he mention anything around this time about the size of the estate? You testified on Friday about discussions concerning the size of the estate. Did that discussion continue up through this period of December 11th?
I recall mostly his discussion about the money was right after. It was in like August and early September that he had brought it to my attention, the amount of money. Around this time, he may have, but I just don't recall any specific conversations about their inheritance at this time.
Do you remember as late as March of 1990 in one of the tape-recorded sessions you made with the police that he said something along the lines of, "Get out of here, Judalon, there's $14 million involved here"?
Yes,
And your response to him was, "What do you mean by that?"
yes,
And he said, "You know what I mean?"
yes,
But he didn't explain further what he meant, correct?
correct.
And was he making statements like that all the way along the way, that there were $14 million involved here?
Yes,
Now, when he said he wanted to get them to incriminate themselves on tape, who was present when he made that statement?
just myself. He did not discuss this in front of my father.
And did he indicate why he did not want you at the session?
Well, I never wanted to be at any of them, so I didn't press him for why he didn't want me to be there.
He just indicated to you he was going to have a session by himself with the two brothers.
Yes.
And did you talk to him at any point later on that day? That would be on the 11th.
On the 11th, yes,
Did you talk to him after the tape had been made? The
yes,
tape of December 11th?
yes.
What did he indicate to you in terms of whether his plan had been accomplished?
He said that he got what he needed.
Got what he needed?
Mm-hmm.
And when did you have that conversation with him?
Very, very late. On the night of December 11th, because I believe they were meeting at 4 o'clock again. And so I, of course, was very concerned, and so I would call Laurel and ask her if she had heard anything from him, because I didn't have the ability to call directly into his office, and she did. And so I would call Laurel, and then Laurel would call him, and then Laurel would call me back, and she'd say, well, they're still talking. And so it was probably close to midnight before he called me.
And he called you and said he got what he needed, or words to that effect?
Yes,
Did he explain what he meant by that?
that he got them to cooperate to make a cassette tape, and now he had the tape, which would mean that we would be safe.
And on or about this date, did you move into the house, his house,
It was after this.
after December 11th? And what date did you move into the house?
Somewhere around December 19th.
And why did you move into the house?
Because he had succeeded in frightening Susan to move out. So Suzanne had moved out before my father came, and then my mother knew what happened. I had confided in my mother about the killings and what was going on. So my mother sent my father out, but my father didn't really know what was going on until after he got here, and then I told him. And then he kept pressing me to make my father leave. My father was supposed to be here much longer.
No wonder it's so slow.
But Oziel wanted to get rid of my father because he was losing control of me. My father was saying, you have to go to the police with this. This is wrong. And so Oziel wanted my dad out of the way. And what he
Ask another
did...
question.
Sure. And why specifically did you move into the house? Because you wanted to be with him? Because you were
No,
afraid? For
because
some other reason?
I was alone in this big house that was not very secure. And I had talked to my landlord about putting bars up, and my landlord finally had agreed to put some bars up on some of the vulnerable windows. So in the meantime, Oziel just He called me one night, and I was very frightened and upset. Something had happened to frighten me and upset me. And he just came right over and started throwing my clothes in a suitcase and took me out to his house.
And that was about December 19th?
Yes.
And was his wife still living in the home at that point?
Yes.
How long did you remain in the home with his wife and Dr. Oziel?
Until I escaped on the Sunday, the first Sunday of March.
And during that period of time, were you carrying on a romantic involvement with Dr. Oziel?
I wouldn't call it romantic,
Well, sexual.
but there was sex.
And his wife was still in the picture at that point? In other words, she was still in the home?
She and I were, I would say we were very good friends.
And did you have discussion about her fear and your fear of the Menendez brothers at that point?
Objection, relevant.
Sustained.
Did Dr. Oziel continue to threaten you with the Menendez brothers during the period of time that you were in the home?
It became worse.
And how did it become worse? First of all, did you express a desire to leave?
Up until December 25th, I thought that I loved him and that I had to, the only way I was going to, live and survive was if he loved me. And then on December 25th, on Christmas Day, something happened that snapped me out of it. And I realized the truth about him. And from that point, I wanted to go, but on that day, Laurel cracked her hip.
Well, without getting into the details of that, something happened on that day that caused you to want to leave, correct?
Yes.
All right. And did you try and leave on the 25th?
Well,
Did Oziel push her or something? And that's how she fell and cracked her hip? What happened to Mrs. Oziel? Anybody know? Oh my gosh, this is so crazy.
no, because Laurel needed me at that time because of her accident and her
Did you
cracked
ever
hip.
express to him?
So now, okay, you're the mistress, but you're going to be helping out the ex-wife because she cracked her hip?
That you wanted to leave the home?
As soon as Laurel started getting better, about, I would say in early January is when I started saying I should go back to my own house.
And were there children in the house when this was all going on?
Yes,
How old were the children?
Objection, relevant.
Overall.
9 and I believe 11, maybe 12.
And prior to moving in, had Dr. Oziel started giving you some drugs to take?
Yes,
And was one of the drugs he gave you to take Prozac?
yes,
Was another one Xanax?
yes.
And did you want to take those drugs?
No,
Did he tell you you had to take them?
yes.
Did it start to affect your memory as you were taking those drugs over a period of time?
I had a terrible reaction to the drugs.
Did he first start giving you those drugs on November 9th, 1989?
I believe so. Around that time period, definitely.
Did he continue to give you those drugs after you moved into his home?
Yes,
During the period of time just before you moved into his home, did he tell you you were suicidal and take you to a hospital?
yes,
And were you released from the hospital because you weren't suicidal
yes,
into his care?
yes.
And did he then take you to his home
What?
shortly after that?
Why would why would they release him into his care if he's the one that is doing the harm to her?
Yes,
And while you were in the home, did he tell you that if you tried to leave, he was going to get you admitted to a state mental institution?
correct.
I'm just trying to expedite it a little bit.
All right, objection overruled.
He indicated to you that if you left or you wanted to leave, he was going to try and get you admitted to a state mental institution.
Yes,
And later on, after the police, you escaped from the home
It's traumatizing for her.
and went to the police. Did he call you up and continue to try and tell you that you had been suicidal?
yes,
Did he also try and, did he in fact assault you physically while you were in the home to keep you there?
yes, he did.
And did he tell you that the Menendez brothers, he would inform the Menendez brothers that you knew about them in order to keep you in the home?
I think the wrong people in this are behind bars. Maybe Oziel should be behind bars. Ridiculous.
Rephrase the question.
Did he tell you that you were going to stay in the house, and if you didn't stay in the house, he was going to tell the Menendez brothers that you knew about them?
Yes, he did.
And so what date was it that you finally escaped from the home?
It was the first Sunday of March. I think it was March 4th.
And why did you go to the police on March 5th and tell Detective Zoller that you had certain information about the Menendez brothers confessing?
Because I believed that Jerry Oziel was going to have me killed.
And after you went to the police, was there a certain amount of publicity shortly after the Menendez brothers were arrested?
Yes,
And after there was this amount of publicity, did Dr. Oziel call you up and basically tell you to keep your mouth shut?
yes, he did.
Did he imply to you that if you didn't keep your mouth shut, it was going to be very uncomfortable for you in terms of him revealing information about you?
Yes, he did.
tape I'd like Mark, defendants next in order. Two tapes.
340 and 341.
I got nothing.
The reason we're working into the lunch hour, ladies and gentlemen, is that we have a juror who has to go to a medical appointment this afternoon early, so rather than take a break at this point, we just go ahead a little farther, and then we'll take an early break, and everyone will be excused this afternoon. So let's keep on going for a while.
Just showing you exhibit 340, is that, it's a tape, which is marked tape number 3, is that a phone call that you received from Dr. Oziel on March 8th?
Yes.
And is that a tape that you made at the request of the Beverly Hills Police Department?
Yes, it is.
They have provided you with some equipment to put on your phone.
Yes, they did.
And I'm going to play for you now 340.
Hello. Well, you did what you did, and that's what you did. I think there's going to be an intense amount of media focus on this, and for your benefit in terms of things that you just did not have disclosed, and have the media looking at and other people looking at. And for my benefit, I suggest you have no comment about anything, because they've already released news reports now that these people were apprehended, or one of them was as a result of information provided by a Beverly Hills quote-unquote psychiatrist. So there's going to be an intense amount of media focus, and I'm assuming you're going to come into it at some point. And I suggest that unless you want a number of things disclosed that you don't really want disclosed, that you have no comment about anything. And I suggest that you retain an attorney to have no comment about anything, which I'm sure what he'll tell you to do. Otherwise, you'll be a part of a media circus, and so will I, and you could be subject to other stuff.
Otherwise, you'll be part of a media circus, and so will I. It's his reputation that he's worried about, not hers. He's worried about what's going to come out about him now in the media.
That isn't very positive for your life. So, you did what you did. Thursday, 11 p.m.
And is that a phone call that you took to be some sort of a threat that you should keep your mouth shut?
Yes.
And playing you now 341. Was this a tape that was also made on or about March 8th after there was some publicity about the case?
It's really hard to hear because of the audio, but he's basically threatening to expose all the things that she doesn't want exposed to the world because he knows them because he's her therapist and he manipulated his way into her life to become somehow a relationship, whether it was just physical or not, I don't know, but somehow he was in a relationship with her also and a therapist. And yet so he's going to use all that information. Like I said, this is what narcissists do. Anything that you tell them, they're going to use it against you. And that's what he's threatening to do. Anything you told me in our private sessions, I'm going to expose to the world. Piece of trash. The wrong person/people are behind bars. Let's release the Menendez brothers and put Oziel behind bars. I think that's a better use of our time and resources.
I would just say that would
I assume that wouldn't be positive. Did you take that as some sort of threat on his part?
I'll be right back. Pause. Sorry. Hopefully there's no more interruptions. It's dog things, whatever. Well, just FYI, when I usually let the dogs out, on nice days, our little dog, she's like a pit bull mix, and she always gets cold, and she loves to go lay out in that sun. Like she'll just lay forever. But I don't want her to get too hot, and when I'm up here recording, I can't hear her if she wants to come in. So I leave the door cracked, or not even cracked. I leave it like not all the way pushed in, and she pushes her way back in the house. So she opens the door up on her own. She's little, but she's tiny and smart, I mean. And so yeah, she opens the doors on her own and then comes in, and then I gotta go close the door so it's not hanging wide open and critters come in. So there's my explanation. So I apologize. A lot of times it's me taking the dogs out because they have very short attention spans to lay down for long periods of time. Anyways, let's keep going.
Yes, it did.
And what did you think he was referring to?
I wasn't really sure because there isn't anything that terrible in my life. I've never had a drink of alcohol. I've never smoked a cigarette. I've never done drugs. So it's like I didn't know what he was going to talk about or say. And I didn't learn until later that he was going to make up a lot of lies about me and spread them through, the media.
Now, Dr. Oziel testified that he broke off his relationship with you sometime in February, and that there was a series of phone calls that were played for him in March that he said didn't represent his relationship because at that time he was worried you were suicidal. And first of all, were you suicidal in March?
Objection, argument, that is a common question.
Sustained.
Were you suicidal in March of 1990?
No.
And after you went to the police, and there was some publicity about this, did Dr. Oziel call you up on March 17 and attempt to convince you that you had been suicidal earlier in your relationship?
Yes.
What kind of therapist with a conscience convinces their patients that they're ready to take their own life? What kind of quack is this? And why did he have a license for so long? I'm so confused.
He did.
Have a tape I'd like, Mark? If I'm next to Mark.
I'm good to my dad and my grandmother. We're both signed the same time here.
Are you in Seattle?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well,
Is your father in the hospital?
no, not yet. I got your letter, and we shouldn't feel like that. Glad to get you back in. I find that you're actually, what I was thinking is that it might really be nice if we talked all the time about how it was really important not to have things be negative. It might be nice if we got together and didn't talk about anything other than it's just what we need to go on, because it's just probably some stuff that really contains you. And I don't want to leave you that way. What?
Yes, I loved you very much, and I thought that you loved me.
Well, Judalon, there are a lot of things I think you still love me, and I think that there are a lot of things that happen.
I think you still love me.
Did you love me?
You're so, you were doing that the first week I met you. You're still doing that. The first week I met you, you were doing that. That's really cute. You haven't changed one bit.
So, did you love me?
Let me tape record it. I'm teasing you. Anyway.
Sure, you did love me?
You little shit.
Do you still love me?
Wait, this was...
Nobody.
Yeah. You still love me?
I asked you.
I'm not answering unless you tell me. Tell me for an update. Get prepared.
I've been through that before.
Well, you're going to go through it again. You haven't been to the National Enquirer before. You get to do that too. So anyway,
You haven't been in the National Enquirer before, but what? That's going to happen too?
you haven't been to the National Enquirer before. You get to do that too.
You get to
So
do
anyway,
that.
so listen, when I get back, maybe what we can do is I can bring you whatever stuff I have to bring you, but more important than that. I mean, whatever stuff is there. I like the part about the suicide. That was really great.
That was a tape that was made on March 17th.
I believe so.
And in that tape, Dr. Oziel was trying to convince you you were suicidal and keep telling you, go get the medical.
Yes.
He's trying to convince her that she wants to end her own life.
Overall.
And did you in fact go get the medical records for hospital admittance in early December?
Yes.
1989. And that was a situation where Dr. O'Zeel had taken you to a hospital in Sherman Oaks, correct?
Yes.
There was an incident when Dr. Oziel took her to the hospital in Sherman Oaks, and she says, yes, that's correct.
Also, but when he's telling me to go get the medical records, he knew very well that I didn't even know what hospital he had taken me to. It wasn't until after I obtained a lawyer that we got those records.
But eventually you did get the records, correct?
Eventually, we got the records.
Did you learn from the records that it was Dr. Oziel who brought you into the hospital and told the medical personnel there that you were incoherent?
Your call for hearsay.
Sustained.
How's it hearsay if
Show me what's
she's
been marked
there?
as 344.
What is 343, Mr. Burt?
Excuse me, Your Honor. Showing you what has been marked as 343 and 344.
What is 343?
343 is a medical record. And 344 is also a medical record. Showing you 343, is that the medical record of your recording your visit to the Sherman Oaks Community Hospital on December 9th, 1989?
Yes, it is.
And does this portion of the medical records, 343, indicate that you were brought in by your friend who is a psychologist?
Yes, it does.
And does it also indicate that you were examined by someone after you were brought in by a psychologist?
Yes, it does.
Does it indicate you were not suicidal?
Yes, it does.
And is exhibit number 344 another portion of the medical records which indicates that you were brought in with an indication that patient is not coherent?
Yes, it does.
And as far as you recall that incident, was that information
Yeah, it's not hearsay, Judge. It's right there on a report.
that Dr. Oziel provided when he brought you in?
Yes, it is.
Were you in fact coherent when he took you into the hospital on the 9th?
I was unconscious.
And were you having, had you had any drugs that day that he had provided you?
That he had forced down me.
Yeah, what kind of drugs had you been taking that day?
I had not voluntarily taken any drug that day.
How is it that you came to be unconscious?
Because I was pressing Oziel to go to the police. There was some bit of evidence that I believed was going to disappear. And I thought that we needed to go to the police now, like that weekend. And he was getting very frightened and concerned that because my father was there and had some influence on me that I might do what he termed as something crazy and go to the police. So he had kept me on the phone a lot the day and night before. And then when I went to my store the next day, he was, calling, and then I would like to say, a customer came in or something, and I would get off, and he'd say, well, call me right back. So then I'd have to call him back, and we just were going round and round about this police issue. And so finally, my dad, in one of the moments where I wasn't on the phone, my father said, why don't you just hang up on the, and he said some bad word. And I said, because from past experience, Dad, he'll just race right over here and park himself inside the store, and then I'll have to deal with him physically. So my dad said, well, you need rest. And so I said, well, the only way that he lets up a little bit is when he thinks he's totally broken me down and that I'm a mess. So we decided to close my store early, and we went home, and I went to bed. And then my father, Oziel, called at home when he couldn't reach me at my business, and he spoke with my father. And my father came into my room after I had gone to bed and said, he's insisting on talking to you. He told me that he's your doctor and that you're depressed and that he needs to talk to you about it. And I said, Dad, the whole reason I closed the store and did this was so I wouldn't have to talk to him. And so my dad went back, and then I went to sleep. The next thing I knew, Oziel was putting pills in my mouth and pulling water up, and I just drank it and swallowed. And the next thing I knew, I woke up in Oziel's house.
And you got in his house after you went to the hospital?
Whoa. I don't even know what to say. How did Oziel get past the father? Like, why would the father let him in there? Kind of mad at the father. I mean, no offense, father, but she said she wanted to get away from him. She didn't want to talk to him, and yet you let him into the room and feed pills down her throat. I mean, no offense, father, but maybe you should have been a little bit more forceful with Dr. Oziel, and yeah, I don't know the circumstances or the situation, but that seems pretty effed up to me that Oziel would come in while she's sleeping and force pills down her throat just to make her incoherent, as he puts it.
Hospital? In other words, they released you from the hospital?
He removed me from my house, according to my father, at about 4:20 to 4:30 that afternoon. He took me to Sherman Oaks Community Hospital at 8:23 was when they admitted me there. I lived in Carthay Circle, which is like 10 minutes from Cedars-Sinai, 10 minutes from Century City Hospital, like just a few blocks from Westside Hospital.
When did they release you from the Sherman Oaks Hospital?
That same night.
And were you released to Dr. Oziel's custody?
Yeah, according to Dr. Oziel, I was released to his custody, but I was still fairly unconscious when I was released. Even I was dazed.
And where did he take you?
To his home.
He also says on this tape, we're going to be stars, not exactly for the right reasons. You better get on your makeup and put your dark glasses on. You don't really know what's happening because you haven't been released to the press yet. I have. There have been hundreds of photographers following me everywhere. It's awful. It's just awful. Did it sound to you, based on your knowledge of Dr. Oziel and your relationship with him, that he was having a tough time struggling with the media attention he was receiving?
No, he loves that.
Sustained. The answer is stricken.
Did Dr. Oziel ever have any problem with the fact that the media was paying attention to him, so far as you know, based on your contact with him?
Sustained.
Oh, come on, Judge.
Went to the police. I think you testified on Friday that at some point on the 6th, you sat down and gave a lengthy tape-recorded statement to a deputy district attorney and Detective Zoller, correct?
Correct.
And on that tape statement, did you indicate to them that you, in fact, had overheard Lyle and Eric Menendez confessing to the murder of their parents?
Yes.
And at the time you gave that statement, did you believe that, in fact, you had overheard it?
Yes.
Had you overheard it?
Bits and pieces of it, yes.
Had you overheard it to the extent of providing the police with details such as you did on the 6th?
When I told the police, I asked them if they wanted me to differentiate between what I heard and what Oziel told me, and they said no, just to tell them the whole story complete.
Regardless of whether you heard it from Oziel or you overheard it yourself?
Yes.
And in June of 1990, did the district attorney's office ask you to sign a declaration or an affidavit that the district attorney prepared for your signature?
I'm sorry, what was the date?
In June of 1990, and specifically June 8th, 1990.
I do remember they had me sign something. I don't remember the date.
The exhibit next in order, it's an affidavit that you want to sign.
345.
Dated June 8th, 1990. Ms. Smith, showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 345, is that an affidavit which was prepared by the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office and presented to you for your signature?
Objection, lack of foundation.
Overruled.
Yes.
And you see on the last page your signature is with the date of June 8th, 1990, correct?
Correct.
Now, in this affidavit, which you signed on June 8th, 1990, did you sign a statement which reads in part as follows? While I was, page 18, line 10. This is a quote from your affidavit. While I was in the next office, listening to the conversation in Dr. Oziel's office with the defendants, I heard a detailed description of the killings was given by the defendants, which included the following. And then there's a long list of details which you purport to have overheard. And some of the details are at page 19. The mother and father were both on the couch in a den or TV room and were watching TV. The mother was the one Eric talked about. Parts of the body were severed. The arm was shot off. The mother's head was blown off or badly shot, really mutilated. The defendant spoke of the eyeball coming out of the eye socket, the parts of the brains on the walls. They talked about the smell of the blood in the room, and they shot it up so much that there was smoke in the room. Quote, the cloud was very thick in the room, and the residue was even there when the police arrived, or the smell. The defendants told of eyes coming out of the socket and body tissue and blood coming up onto the walls. End quote. You recall that that declaration contained that statement and others which you allegedly overheard?
I didn't realize that until I recently saw that declaration. I have a lot of problems with that declaration because it was prepared and they brought it to me to sign 3 different times. And when I started reading it, I would find things that I felt weren't correct. And I'd tell them, they'd go back, they'd make the change, they'd come back, show it to me. They'd made that correction, but then there would be a new thing that was wrong. And that happened about, I think it was maybe the 4th time that I finally signed it. And even then, when I started reading it, there were problems and inaccuracies. And I asked for something to be changed, and they wouldn't change it. So I crossed it out and wrote in my own handwriting. And then I didn't finish reading it because they were just tired of me sending it back. And so I ended up signing it. And then I've never read it until, in fact, even when you showed that to me, I didn't read it. You read parts of it to me. And it's pretty foreign to me.
You referred to making a change. On page 2 of this exhibit, there's some handwriting, which appears to have your initials, correct?
Correct.
And is that a change that you made in this?
Correct.
Now, the part I read to you, you indicate that you personally overheard the details that are read, right?
That's what that indicates, but I did not write that document.
Did you in fact overhear those details?
The details of the murder itself were told to me by Jerry Oziel.
All right, and the part in here about the defendant spoke of the eyeballs coming out of the eye socket, parts of the brains on the wall. Was that something you ever overheard either Eric or Lyle Menendez confess to?
No, that came from Jerry Oziel. I heard them talk about smoke, not the smell of blood, but the smoke, about a lot of smoke in the room.
And in fact, you now realize that not even Dr. Oziel claims that they made these statements, correct?
I don't know that.
Objection sustained. The answer is true.
But is it true that you in fact never heard from Lyle or Eric Menendez the details or similar details that are in this declaration?
No.
And is it true, though, that Dr. Oziel gave you these details that I just read you as well as many others?
Correct.
And did he give you these details graphically so as to frighten you, in your opinion?
Objection calls for proper opinion.
Sustained.
Did Dr. Oziel give you details such as I've read to you about the eyeballs coming out of the eye socket, parts of the brains on the walls? Did he give you that graphic detail when he was describing for you what the brothers supposedly told him?
Yes, he did.
And did he do that on more than one occasion?
He told me over and over and over.
Did he seem fixated on telling you all of the details that the brothers supposedly told him?
Yes.
Calls for proper opinion.
Objection sustained. The answer is correct.
Did he seem to have difficulty relating those details to you? In other words, was he secretive or reluctant to give you those details?
No, he was eager.
And was those details were given to you during the period of your relationship, correct?
Correct.
And did you also testify in hearing that you overheard similar details? Not that Jerry Oziel told you, but in fact, you yourself had overheard those kinds of details.
Those specifically or other things?
Any of the details.
I believe so.
When you were testifying in other proceedings and also when you filled out this affidavit, which is Exhibit 345, did you in fact believe you had overheard the details that you were describing?
Are you talking about the that hearing in August?
Yes.
You know, after the hearing in August, when I was in that courtroom, I was very frightened, and I did something which I later learned was called disassociating. And so I don't know what my testimony was in that courtroom. I was told, I do remember at the end, I kind of like came back and the judge told me I was not allowed to discuss my testimony with the district attorney or the police. And when I came out of there, I told the district attorney that I was told that I wasn't allowed to tell them any of the details, but I told him that I had this memory lapse in there and that I did want to talk to him about that because I didn't know what I really testified to.
Let me ask you this. When you spoke to the police in a tape-recorded interview on March 6th, your voice is on that tape indicating that you overheard details such as I have read to you, correct?
Yes.
You're telling the police this is what I overheard. At that time...
I don't think I said that I exactly overheard that. I said that this is what they said or this is what, I just told them what happened.
Right. And at that time, did you believe you in fact had overheard that?
I believed everything.
Well, were you being careful at that time to distinguish the information which Oziel had told to you and the information which you in fact had overheard?
At what time?
March 7th. March 6th, excuse me, when you gave the statement to the police.
Not at all. Partially because I don't think I knew the difference between what I had been told and what I actually heard. Because I had heard, I heard parts and bits and pieces, and then Oziel would fill in all the blanks, but then over and over he would tell me what I really heard and what was really happening and really going on. And when I went to
He's trying to gaslight her.
the police, I had just been terribly victimized. I mean, I had not just suffered like one crime against me, I had been repeatedly victimized for months by this man. I mean, I had been raped, I had been beaten, I had been isolated from my family and friends.
Were you still taking drugs at that point, in March?
Yes, I tried not, when I was in Oziel's home, I would sometimes flush the drugs down the toilet. And one night he came into my bathroom where he saw one of the pills floating in the toilet, and then he took the pills out of the cabinet, well, the drawer, and then he shoved his hand down my throat. I had a huge blood blister down the back of my throat from where he crammed the drugs down me. So I was afraid if I didn't take them, what would happen to me, but at the same time, I couldn't function and I couldn't think while I was taking those drugs. So I'd had very little sleep. I was traumatized when I showed up at the police station.
Let me ask you this. Later, in approximately May of 1990, were you approached by a television reporter who was doing a story about this case?
In May
May of 1990.
Yes.
And was that Diane Sawyer?
Yes.
Did she come into your office?
Sawyer, what? Diane Sawyer comes into the trial here. Diane Sawyer contacted Judalon Smyth. Crazy. All right, here we go.
in May of 1990 and indicate that she wanted to talk to you about your involvement in the Menendez case?
Yes, she did.
And did you go on camera for a show that was broadcast on May 17th, 1990, and indicate that at this time, I'm not at liberty to discuss anything concerning the case?
That's true.
And they broadcast that on May 17th, 1990.
Correct.
And then did you, at about the same time, participate in an interview with Diane Sawyer in which you gave certain information to them, which was later broadcast in August of 1990?
I'm sorry. Can you say that over again?
Sure.
Because the time frame, I'm not sure about what you're saying on the time frame.
There was broadcast a show on May 17th, 1990, where your voice appears and your image on the camera saying, at this time, I'm not at liberty to discuss anything concerning the case. Do you remember that?
Yes.
May 17th, 1990.
Yes.
And did you participate in a show which was aired on August 30th, 1990, in which your likeness is again broadcast and you make certain statements about your knowledge of the case?
Yes.
And when did you give the interview which resulted in that broadcast?
In June of 1990.
And during the course of that program, were you asked by Diane Sawyer on camera, are Lyle and Eric Menendez guilty? Did they murder their parents? And you answered, yes, they did. Diane Sawyer says, you know this, and you say, absolutely. I heard from their own mouths that they killed their parents. Do you remember making that statement?
Yes.
Did you hear from their own mouths that they had killed their parents?
I heard things from them that made me believe that they had killed their parents, but I don't think I heard an exact sentence, I killed my mother or I killed my father.
And do you remember Diane Sawyer asking you, they were proud of it, they were proud of how they carried it off, and you answered, absolutely. They felt that they had committed the perfect crime. Remember making that statement on camera?
Yes, and that if you look at, actually the word absolutely is an Oziel word, and so my answer is really a programmed Oziel answer that I gave.
Did you hear him say that they felt that they had committed the perfect crime? I'm asking you what you heard as opposed to what Oziel told you.
And that came up in Oziel's testimony about the boys, him saying that the boys committed the perfect crime. And I'm sorry I always refer them to the boys, but I'll always think of them as the boys. I don't know. Because I grew up with this story, so they were always referred to as the boys or the Menendez brothers. So, anyways, this just corroborates what Dr. Oziel had said, that he was trying to talk about, the boys doing this perfect crime, Oziel's words. So he might have, like she said, programmed that answer into her by repeatedly hammering all that information, hammering the narrative that he wants spun.
Well, I heard something, and then when I questioned Oziel about it, then he told me the part that I didn't hear was that they had committed the perfect crime. I heard the beginning part of something, and then later when they had left, then Oziel and I talked about it, and I said, well, why were you laughing? Why were I think it was Lyle. I said, why was he laughing? And then he said something about my father, for once my father or something. And so then that's when Jerry Oziel completed it for me. So I heard the beginning part, and I had no reason to believe that I was being lied to, because Jerry Oziel always told me that he was the most truthful, honest man I would ever know or meet in my life.
Well, when you were
Oh my God, if someone says that to you, run. Just run. That is a lie.
giving these statements to the press that were broadcast on August 30th, did you believe, in fact, you had overheard those statements?
Yes, I definitely believe that.
Do you believe it now? That you personally overheard those statements or similar statements as opposed to things that Oziel said to you?
No, since then I have been in therapy, and we had worked on sorting out what I was brainwashed with and what was real.
The real therapist.
And how about the
is
affidavit that
helping
you
her.
signed in June of 1990 where you claimed to have overheard those details? When you signed that affidavit, did you believe you, in fact, had overheard the details that are set forth in that affidavit?
Yes.
You
There were
believe-
inaccuracies in that, but I did believe at that time that I had heard everything.
Now, do you remember that the police gave you a body wire to wear to a meeting that took place on March 19th, 1990?
Yes.
And was that a meeting where Jerry Oziel came to your house to deliver some of your property because you had moved out?
Yes.
And were the police, in fact, in your home hiding in a closet
Yes.
when Oziel arrived?
Yes.
And did you, in fact, make a recording of a conversation you had with him on the 19th?
Correct.
And during the course of that conversation, did he say, you already did something really stupid, really, really stupid, and you said, well, the boys are in jail and I'm not dead, and you said that if I went to the police, I'd be dead in 2 minutes, and he said, guess what, it's going to be a little bit longer.
Yes, I remember him saying that. Are you saying this happened at the time of the body wire, or is this one of the phone calls?
At the time of the body wire, was that tape made?
I remember the statement. I wasn't sure whether it was on the phone or at the time of the body wire.
346.
Smyth, was there a portion of this body wire where you and Dr. Oziel had a conversation and Dr. Oziel kept interjecting some words about a story that you two were familiar with?
Objection, relevancy.
Okay, portion of this. Okay, for your ask a question about it.
Jerry, you got here because you scared me.
I got here. You want me to leave?
No, I want you to tell me the truth.
I will tell you the truth.
Okay.
Thorne? These your Thorne? Are these your Thorne?
Okay, yes.
Are they?
Yes.
Why are you doing this?
Why am I doing what?
You should talk to your mom. Come on, tell her behave.
I'm just trying to find, that was, when you called me Sarah, that was very scary.
Judalon, I've been living with scary things day in and day out for a long time now.
I don't think you're afraid of them.
I don't think I'm very much afraid of anything, but the bottom line is that, why are you behaving this way?
Because I'm afraid of them and you.
You're afraid of me? That's not nice. Does Ishi look like Ishi's afraid of me?
No, but Ishi doesn't have a brain, so.
That is a really mean thing to say. That is really mean and vicious. That's not. Ishi, did you hear what your mom said? First, you're really afraid of me? That's not nice. Does Ishi look like Ishi's afraid of me?
No, but Ishi doesn't have a brain, so.
That is a really mean thing to say. That is really mean and vicious. That's not. Ishi,
Someone doesn't have a brain. I don't know what she said there.
did you hear what your mom said? First, she insults your face and says it's not very nice and pretty, and then says you don't have a brain. I wouldn't take this. I'd move out.
And the portion that I played for you, Ms. Smith, Dr. O'Neill, when you're talking to him, you say, he said, saying, that's why I'm being an asshole and I don't know how to get around it. Remember the thorns. And you say, okay, yes, that's true. He says, is it true? You say, okay. He says, is it? You then say, Jerry, I just. He says, thorns. You say, Jerry, you got here because, and he says, thorns. What is he referring to as you're talking to him there?
Objection, relevance.
Just tape. Why was this tape being made, this body wire tape? What was your understanding as to why the police were in your closet and had provided you with a body wire?
Objection, called for speculation, hearsay.
Overruled.
Because Oziel had called me and told me that I was still in danger and there were some other people that were going to kill me. And I called Detective Zoller and told him. And the reason why he was there was so we could find out who the other people were that he claimed were going to kill me, because there's another conversation where he says he knows who they are and he'll tell me who they are, but I have to meet with him in person.
Was that the conversation that we played earlier where he was in Seattle and called you on the 17th?
It may be.
And when you,
Yes, if anyone has to use the restroom, go ahead. You may continue your examination.
thank you. Ms. Smith, you indicated that there was a reason why the police asked you to make this body wire tape of March 19th.
Yes,
What was the reason it was given to you?
because Oziel had called me and told me that there were other people that were going to kill me.
And so were you instructed by the Beverly Hills Police to try and draw him out on that topic?
Yes.
And playing you a portion of what's been marked as 346.
Well, the first thing that we have to establish is just what kind of relationship do we have? Because you have not been behaving like a friend at all.
Jerry, that's not the first thing that we have to establish. The first thing that we
The
have
first thing I have to establish, because you've been behaving, just really.
You mean that there's other people out there that would want to kill me and you're not going to tell me that?
They probably want to kill me too. And you got going to the 6th for what you did. And I tried to tell you that, and you wouldn't listen to me. I tried to tell you that you didn't know half the story, and you don't.
Well, then maybe you should tell me so that I can not do something stupid.
You already did something really stupid. Really, really stupid. You already did it.
Well, the boys are in jail and I'm not dead, and you said that if I went to the police, I'd be dead in 2 minutes.
Well, guess what? It's going to be a little bit longer.
And after Dr. Oziel said, well, guess what, it's going to be a little bit longer. Did you take that as some sort of threat to your safety, that in fact you were going to be dead in a little bit longer?
Yes, and also that he wanted me to believe that he was still the only person who could protect me and take care of me and help me.
And before this tape was made, had you spent a considerable amount of time with Detective Zoller?
Yes.
Had you spent a considerable amount of time with him on March 5th, which I believe you said was the first day you went to the police?
Yes, actually the first time Detective Zoller came with a commissioner friend of mine, like a commissioner judge friend of mine. I didn't call the police directly. The commissioner called Detective Zoller, and they came to my home.
And how much time did you spend with Detective Zoller in that first meeting with him?
It was many hours.
And was that first meeting was just the two of you talking without a tape recorder?
Correct.
Did you indicate to
Well,
Detective...
there was I believe that the commissioner was present during that whole conversation as well.
And did you indicate to Detective Zoller in the conversation you initially had with him on March 5th that you had overheard the Menendez brothers confess to the killing of their parents?
No, I don't think so. I did not want to be drawn into this or made a witness, so I did not reveal that I had heard anything, and it just sort of kept slipping out.
You said that after the December 11th session with the brothers that Oziel said something to the effect of, "I got what I wanted," words to that effect.
Yes.
And did he also indicate to you that those gruesome details that ended up in that affidavit that I read to you, he had those kind of details on the tape of December 11th?
Yes.
And what did he say in that regard?
He said that on the cassette tape that was made on December 11th, that the boys had described in detail the killing of their parents, and then he gave me some of those details. And I told the police that's what I believed was on the tape.
In other words, in their own voice, they had described the kind of detail that you provided to the police about the eyeballs popping out and that sort of gruesome
Correct.
detail.
Sustain the answer, sir.
Dr. Oziel told you that there were details of the killings on the December 11th tape.
Correct.
And with reference to the body wipe, you had mentioned before that Dr. Oziel kept bringing up the subject of the estate being worth $14 million.
Correct.
I want to play a portion of the body wire tape of March 19th.
Okay.
Are you trying to say that someone else?
You know, I'm trying to tell you that I'm not sure why I should help you. Because you haven't done anything
I'm not sure why I should help you.
but try to hurt me.
I didn't do this to try to hurt you, Jerry.
And this bullshit about somebody coming in and saying, "No, come on, get out of here."
I didn't do this to try to hurt you, Jerry.
You would cancel somebody coming here now in 12 seconds. If there really is anybody coming here, you would cancel it in 12 seconds.
Jerry.
You're telling me there's somebody coming that's not. Because we got about 5 hours to talk about, at least.
5 hours?
You bet your sweet ass we do.
Jerry, what can we talk about for 5 hours?
Judalon, is there somebody coming here or not? If there is, I'll take my stuff and I'll go.
Jerry, I don't know why you just can't tell me the truth about where I am or who's endangering me.
I told you where you were. And I told you I don't know. And I told you there are a whole lot of different people who might be endangering you. You have a bunch of people. You are not more safe than you were before. I was trying to tell you something, and you didn't try
But
to.
I don't believe you. I don't believe that.
Good. If you go home, I just mean you would not believe me. I talk with people, and I know things. I don't know who made any calls to me, but I know things. And I don't know who those people are. The police couldn't get anything from me if they asked me.
Ms. Smith, in that portion of the tape, when Dr. Oziel is referring to other people, who did you take that to mean?
Objection, call for speculation.
Did Dr. Oziel indicate to you people other than the Menendez brothers were putting you in danger?
Yes, he did. And in the phone conversation, he suggested that he knew who they were and that he was going to tell me, but only if I would see him in person.
And did he in fact tell you who these other people were who supposedly were placing you in danger?
No, that's what that whole body wire was about. And when he got there, he evaded it, and all he wanted to do was hug me and kiss me and talk about our relationship. And then there was the police. We had set up that this policewoman was going to come to the door after an hour. And so I had told Oziel that someone was coming to my house at that time. So, because, he's very long-winded. And if you don't give him some time frame.
He's very long-winded? Yes, we knew. We know.
He'll take 10 hours to say what anyone else could say in 10 minutes.
And in fact, you have telephone conversations where he was on the phone with you for hours, correct?
Yes.
268 minutes is one of the calls?
And there are longer ones than that. And so we decided to give him a 1-hour time frame by saying that I had someone coming to the house. And he became obsessed with whether there was really someone coming to my house or not. And that he didn't believe me. He was saying, I don't believe you because you would cancel anybody coming to the house in 12 seconds if you knew you were seeing me.
Did he indicate
That's like
to you
his fantasy, like he's so important.
Did he indicate to you he thought you may have had another man coming to the house?
Objection, relevant.
Sustained.
I'm going to play one more portion of this tape, please. Smith.
Jerry, the boys did that by themselves.
You don't know what you're talking about. I can't tell you anymore. I tried to tell you before. If you want to believe that, then I'll just stay on here. You need to do what you do, okay? You're not going to know. There was $14 million involved in this.
So?
So? Figure it out.
I don't know what that means.
Well, let's figure it out.
What does that mean?
It means nothing.
That portion which I just played for you, Dr. Oziel indicates to you that there were $14 million involved in this, and you say so, and he says, so figure it out. You say, what does that mean? And he says, it means nothing. Do you recall that?
I most certainly do.
And is that a theme that he had repeated even before March 19th? That is that there were $14 million involved in this?
Objection, David.
Why don't you rephrase the question?
Before March 19th, when you were wearing this body wire, and he made this statement about there were $14 million involved, is that the first time he had ever mentioned that topic?
No.
Was that a statement or a theme that he stressed throughout the period of time from August of 1989 up to the time when this tape was made?
Yes.
Overall, your answer?
Yes.
And was there another tape that you made, Ms. Smith, on March 7th, 1990, at the request of the Beverly Hills Police Officer? Yes, this is exhibit number 118, previously marked. Play a portion of this tape. This is exhibit 118.
I fear for your life that they were going to come into the office and kill you.
Judalon, they might have. Here, you were there.
I know, and so unfortunately now, I know because I overheard stuff and I saw them, and I know, and you told me word for word everything that happened in those
Judalon,
sessions.
you don't know a lot of things that happened. A lot of what was told you wasn't even accurate.
Jerry, you were not lying. You gave the session word for word to me and to Laurel.
Judalon.
All the sessions.
Yeah.
You forget that.
Did you tape record the session last night, or the phone conversation last night?
Smith, that portion I just played to you from the March 7th, 1990 conversation that you had with Dr. Oziel. You say to him, you told me word for word everything that happened in those sessions, And he says, Judalon, you don't know a lot of things that happened, and a lot of what was told you wasn't even accurate. Did you know what he was referring to when he said a lot of what he told you wasn't even accurate?
No, I thought he was just saying that because he didn't want me to tell the police what I knew.
And on the March 19th body wire tape, was he, in your opinion, making an attempt to hypnotize you at any point in time?
Objection improper.
Sustained.
Did Dr. Oziel ever attempt to hypnotize you?
Objection relevant.
I mean, ever, at any time, under any circumstance?
During the period from August 20th, 1989, up to and including the date when this body wire tape was made, did Dr. Oziel attempt in any way to hypnotize you?
Overruled.
Yes, he was.
How was he doing that?
I actually wasn't aware of the depth of what he was doing to me until the body wire, because during that time when he says thorns, I had a total blank. And when Detective Zoller went back to the police station, he called me up and he asked me what thorns meant.
Your Honor, move to strike this as being hearsay and non-responsive.
Thorns was a word he used to get her back to whatever demeanor he needed. One that was compliant with whatever he wished. Holy crap. What if he, like, brainwashed her, like, literally brainwashed her by hypnotizing her and making her think that she was in love with him and she would do anything for him? How messed up is that? That's disgusting. Dr. Oziel should be behind bars. I'm not changing my stance on that.
Sustained. Answer stricken.
Did you at some point listen to that body wire tape?
Yes.
Did you hear the words that I played a little while ago in which Dr. Oziel uses the word repetitiously, thorns?
Yes.
And did that have any significance to you, the use of that phrase over and over again in reference to whether he was trying to hypnotize you?
Yes.
And what was the significance?
Well, it started stimulating other memories of times when he said and similar things like that. But at the time that he said that, I had no knowledge or memory that that was being said. That time period was blocked for me until I heard it on the tape.
So she has memory gaps because this MFer hypnotized her without her knowledge to do his bidding. This sounds like an evil villain in a superhero movie, not real life. But yet, he continued to practice, even though his license was on suspension when he was treating Eric. And the Menendez parents who came to see him too, which is weird.
Could I have 1 minute, Your Honor?
Yes.
June 8, 1990, that you had overheard the Menendez brothers threaten to kill Jerry Oziel and anyone or thing associated with him?
On June 8th?
Yes.
I don't know about the date of that, but I do remember telling the police about that.
And if
But I didn't actually hear Lyle say those words. I heard something, a part of that, and then Jerry Oziel is the one who filled in and said that that's what was actually said.
Well, what did you hear as opposed to what Dr. Oziel told you?
About what?
About threats.
At what point?
First on October 31st, 1989.
Do you understand the question?
On
What did you
October
yourself hear?
31st?
Yes.
Just on October 31st, it was only good luck, Dr. Oziel.
And did you ever hear Lyle Menendez or Eric Menendez say that they were going to kill Jerry Oziel and anyone associated with him?
Well, actually, it was on October 31st when Lyle was yelling at his brother. He said, I could kill you to his brother. And
But did you ever hear him say...
Then
Could you finish your answer?
Yes.
he was like going on, but then all of a sudden he got like quiet. and Eric was crying, and then I couldn't hear what was said, but he was talking. And then that's when Oziel told me that he said, now we have to kill Dr. Oziel and everyone connected to him.
In other words, that information was conveyed to you by Oziel?
Yes, and I believed it because he had said he said I could kill you to his brother.
And did Dr. Oziel give you that information after he came back from going downstairs?
Yes.
Did you say that you looked out the window and saw Dr. Oziel shaking hands with Lyle Menendez?
Yes.
Downstairs?
Yes.
And it was after you saw that he came back, Dr. Oziel came back up, locked the door, and told you that Lyle Menendez had said that he was going to kill Dr. Oziel and anyone associated with him?
He didn't say it the minute he came back in the room
point.
that way, but
At some
yes,
point in
that
time.
night is when he said that, and he fitted into the part that I did hear.
All right. And in this declaration or affidavit, which is Exhibit 345, it says, while in the hallway, I heard Lyle's screams coming from Dr. Oziel's office. Quote, I can't believe you did this. I can't believe you told him. I don't even have a brother now. I could get rid of you for this. Now I hope you know what we're going to have to do. I hope you realize what we are going to have to do. We've got to kill him and anyone associated with him who knows that we are associated to him. Did you, in fact, hear the last portion of that statement? I hope you realize what we're going to have to do. We've got to kill him and anyone associated with him who knows that we are associated to him.
The last thing that I had heard was then Lyle said to his brother, I could kill you for this. And then Eric really was crying out loud, and then he got softer. And then Oziel said the rest of it
To you later.
to me later. And I didn't have any reason to think that it wasn't true.
And were you told that the wording that you have in this declaration is exactly the same as Dr. Oziel has in his notes of that session?
Objection, argumentative, assumes fact not in evidence.
Were you given any information as to whether your information in this declaration was consistent with or contradicted Dr. Oziel's notes?
Objection, calls for hearsay speculation.
Given information by whom? When? Where?
Were you given information by anyone who presented this declaration to you for signing? Either a deputy district attorney or Detective
At the
Zola?
time that I signed that?
Yes.
No.
I believe that's all I have.
Any examination by the clerk?
All right, so that's where we're going to stop today. So thank you so much for being here with me and watching. This is riveting and just like a train wreck. You can't help but stare. It's it's I don't know. It's fascinating to me to see how lawyers get certain information out and sometimes it gets objected to and then they try to get it in another way. I think it's really fascinating to watch. I was gonna really quickly go over because I kept bringing it up the some signs of narcissistic personality. Where's the article I had? Where'd it go? Sorry, it was on my screen and then it disappeared. I just wanted to go over a little bit about what it is. I'm no mental health professional, and I'm not diagnosing Dr. Oziel in any way, but I've dealt with a lot of narcissists, and I have experience in the real world. So, a narcissistic personality disorder is a mental health condition in which people have an unreasonably high sense of their own importance. That sounds like a Oziel, doesn't it? They need and seek too much attention and want people to admire them. People with this disorder may lack the ability to understand or care about the feelings of others. I'm reading this from the Mayo Clinic website, FYI. That's my source. All right, so behind the mask of extreme confidence, they are not sure of their self-worth and are easily upset by the slightest criticism. Can confirm. Used to be married to one, and um, you don't even have to be criticizing them. You could just say something wrong, and they go off on you. So, narcissistic personality disorders causes problems in many areas of life, such as relationships, work, school, or financial matters. People with narcissistic personality may generally be unhappy and disappointed when they're not given the special favors or admiration that they believe they deserve. Um, Interestingly enough, it affects more males than females, and it often begins in the teens or early adulthood. Even some children may start to show signs of it. So, what are some symptoms? Or signs, things that someone with narcissistic personality might do? I'm giving this as just a public service announcement. I feel like it's important to be able to recognize people like this and stay far away from them if you can. So, a narcissist, people with the disorder can have an unreasonably high sense of self importance and require constant, excessive admiration, feel that they deserve privileges and special treatment, expect to be recognized as superior even without achievements, make achievements and talents seem bigger than they are, be preoccupied with fantasies about success, power, brilliance, beauty, or the perfect mate, which sounded a lot like what he was doing with Judalon Smyth, not only with his financial endeavors that he was constantly trying to like do some kind of quick get get rich quick scheme with her. And he would also be bragging about his importance, his brilliance, and all of that. Um, a narcissist can also believe that they are superior to others and can only spend time with or be understood by equally special people. They are critical and look down on people that they feel are not important. They expect special favors and expect other people to do what they want without questioning them. They take advantage of others to get what they want, have an inability or unwillingness to recognize the needs and feelings of others. They may be envious of others and believe others envy them. They may behave in an arrogant way, brag a lot, and come across as conceited. They may insist on having the best of everything, for instance, the best car or office. And then here's some other things that they might struggle with. Um, they may become impatient or angry when they don't receive special recognition or treatment or the admiration that they have. They have very high expectations of how you should praise them and admire them. They may have major problems interacting with others and easily feel slighted. They may react with rage or contempt and try to belittle other people to make themselves appear superior. That I also can confirm. I worked for one and she did that a lot. Um, my ex also was very full, very full of rage. Um, they can also have difficulty managing their emotions and behaviors. I mean, they are not at all self aware and they have no self awareness of their emotions, would be a better way to word that. They don't know how to experience emotions or handle them, keep them in check. They may experience major problems with dealing with stress and adapting to change. They may withdraw from or avoid situations in which they might fail. They may feel depressed and moody because they fall short of perfection. Yeah, that's a sign too, is like wanting to be a perfectionist, um, or at least being perceived as being perfect. For a narcissist, you don't want to have any flaws or weaknesses. Also, you may have secret feelings of insecurity, shame, humiliation, and fear of being exposed as a failure, which is really the big picture as to why people have narcissistic personality. It is all about their own self esteem or lack thereof. And that is really the crux of it. They don't love themselves, therefore, they put everybody else down. It is potentially treatable, but the only way to treat it is that the narcissist themselves must accept that they are a narcissist, which good luck getting them to do that. So it's it is treatable if they are willing and able to do the work and even willing to accept that they have a problem, because a lot of narcissists don't think they're the problem, they think everybody else is. So, yeah, I really wanted to let you guys have that bit of information, even if it's just a refresher for some of us to be aware and to help you identify situations that you might want to steer clear of in the future. Just saying. So, up next, we will have on Thursday, we will have part two of Judalon Smyth, and I hope to see you all there. Now that we've listened to, well, we've completed Oziel, but now that we've heard half of Judalon's testimony, who do you believe more compared to Oziel versus her demeanor on the stand? I'm going to lean more towards she's telling the truth, but that's my opinion based on what I've observed. So, what do you guys think? Please let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit the like button on your way out. And I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for being here. Take care, guys.
If you've been impacted by a true crime and would like your story told in your own words, or if you or someone you know has been wrongfully convicted or accused of a crime, please write to crimeincourtchannel@gmail.com and tell us your real true crime encounters. Thanks for watching.